Chapter 1893. As if sensing her gaze, Luo Yan suddenly raised his head and looked over. The two of them were far apart, but at this moment when their eyes met, they could clearly see the emotions surging in each other's eyes. Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows slightly. Luo Yan Nanyuxing was killed by you. Everyone saw it clearly. Aren't you too much to push the blame onto me? Luo Yan's expression was cold. You were the one who caused Nanyuxing's injuries and he died in this strange flame in the end. What's wrong with me saying that you killed him? Chu Luiyue laughed. After hearing Luo Yan's words and knowing his plan, Chu Luiyue knew that this person had gone mad. There was no need to continue talking to him. Nanyuxing was Nan Yifun's only son. In order to save Nanyuxing, Nan Yifun was even willing to give up his other daughter's life. This showed how much Nanyuxing valued his only heir. Now Nanyuxing was dead. Whoever killed him would become Nan Yifun's mortal enemy. Offending Nan Yifun was undoubtedly offending the entire Nan family. No one would be able to bear the consequences of such a serious incident. Luo Yan dared to do this in broad daylight because he was sure that the elders would not dare to tell anyone about this. Moreover, one side was his own people and the other side was his enemy. Who would Nan Yifun believe? The answer was self-evident. Boom. Another bolt of heavenly lightning struck. This time it was even stronger than the previous one. It almost tore apart the dark clouds that had accumulated in the sky. Chu Luiyue looked up. Just in time. As soon as she thought about it, Tuanzi immediately understood and flapped its wings to fly up. This time, Dumpling headed straight for the mountains further away. Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes and looked at the black shield in her hand. After the fierce battle just now, more than 10 pieces of rust had fallen off. The efficiency was much higher than before. However, the rust that fell off was only 1/10 of the entire shield. She could see that the secret text on it was gradually revealing itself. Although he could only see the tip of the iceberg for now, Chu Luiyue had a clear premonition in his heart. Once the rust on it completely peeled off, it would definitely shine brightly. A faint lustrous glow lingered on the black shield, faintly discernible. Suddenly, a sharp whistling sound came from the front. Chu Luiyue suddenly looked up. Not far in front of him, the void was collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The closer half of the mountain started to shake violently under the impact of the spatial turbulence. Some of the mountain rocks began to roll towards the strange black clouds. A terrifying suction force was emitted from within. It was as if it wanted to devour everything. Chu Luiyue's heart tightened. The void energy of the Peach Blossom Cove was chaotic and could easily collapse. Now that such an intense battle had broken out, it was normal for such a situation to occur. However, the speed of the collapse still exceeded Chu Luiyue's expectations. She frowned slightly and decided to let Dumpling change the direction. However, at this moment, the black shield suddenly emitted a faint buzzing sound. Chu Luiyue's heart shook. The black shield's reaction proved that there was an extremely important force hidden under the mountain. She had to go. Tuanzi turned her head and glanced at her. Chu Luiyue squinted her eyes, then suddenly lifted herself up and jumped. She actually went straight for the mountain alone. Almost at the same time, an astonishing suction force wrapped around her from all directions. The moment her feet landed on the mountain, her body suddenly fell. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared into the void that had already collapsed beyond recognition. Rong Xiu's eyes narrowed. Digression. I'm going to slack off and eat the New Year's Eve dinner. I wish everyone a happy new year. Be healthy and safe. Be victorious in everything. In the future we will continue to be together every day. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1894. With a thought, his figure instantly disappeared from where he was. Master. 13 and the rest also became anxious. Just as they were about to move, Sun Yi stopped them. Wait and see. Sun Yi's words were concise. Wu Yao looked at the terrifying scene and couldn't help but ask. Big brother, are we still not doing anything at this time? The situation on Master's side seemed to be really dangerous. Yes. The void is collapsing. Before long the entire Peach Blossom dock will. Yujio gripped her wooden sword tightly, her heart burning with anxiety. Sun Yi's expression was as calm as ever. If you go over now you'll only cause trouble for Master. Why don't you just stay here? Wu Yao and the rest were conflicted. On one hand they were worried about Master. On the other hand they trusted Big Brother. Seeing Sun Yi like this it seemed they really didn't need to worry? Sai, don't worry. I don't dare to say anything about other places but here. Master will definitely be fine. Sanson, who was at the side, also advised. He had personally witnessed the power of Master in that black shield. That day it had almost burned his small space. Although the flames on the mountains looked scary, thinking about it carefully, wasn't Master the one who set them off herself? Sanson could vaguely guess what Master was looking for. From the start, she deliberately ran over here and used Tianlei, which was triggered by the blood sacrifice array of Majin sect, to split the mountains. Wasn't everything planned by Master long ago? And Rong Xiu's reaction earlier was clearly to cooperate with Master. The power of Peach Blossom Dock space is very chaotic. Whenever there's a problem, such a situation will occur. However, it usually doesn't take long to automatically recover. Moreover, Master has many trump cards. Such a small fluctuation isn't enough to hurt her. You can put your hearts back into your stomachs. Although Sanson spent most of his attention and energy on business, he was still very trustworthy when he was serious at critical moments. Right now, apart from Tsun Yi, he had the highest status among the 13 U-guards present. Hearing him say this, Wu Yao and the rest exchanged glances. Although they could see the worry in each other's eyes, they didn't say anything in the end and nodded in agreement. Look! 13 suddenly exclaimed, attracting everyone's attention. Several pairs of eyes looked over. At this moment, Rong Xiu's figure suddenly appeared above a mountain peak in the distance. The wind blew and the corners of his snow-white clothes fluttered in the wind, making him look like an immortal. A golden flame suddenly gushed out from his palm and transformed into countless stars that scattered in all directions. From afar it looked like a barrier but also like a giant net. Condense. A low and cold voice spread far and wide in this dark and bitterly cold world. As soon as he finished speaking, the collapsing space suddenly froze. The black spatial crack seemed to have been enveloped by the giant net formed by the golden light dots, and it stopped collapsing. At this moment the scene seemed to freeze. Time and space seemed to have stopped flowing. Everyone who saw this scene was shocked. The collapse of the void was caused by the collision of internal and external forces. It was not something that could be controlled by human strength. Otherwise, Peach Blossom Cove would not have remained unoccupied for so many years. However, at this moment, Rong Xiu directly froze the collapsing void and forcefully suppressed the rampaging space turbulence. This was simply, how is this possible? Mo Yun's eyes suddenly widened, and they were filled with horror. Just a moment ago, when he saw Chu Liyue's figure being swallowed by the void, he was secretly delighted. He had stayed here for so long and he had seen many similar scenes. No matter who it was, once they were sucked into it, their ending would be extremely miserable. There was a 99% chance that they would be crippled even if they did not die. It would be best if Chu Liyue could die inside directly. If not, even if he managed to escape alive, he would not be able to make it. At that time, wouldn't he be at their mercy? It would be up to them to kill or torture him. However, who knew that Rong Xiu, who had been watching from the sidelines, would suddenly make a move? And his strength was so powerful. Looking at the tall figure standing in the air, Mo Yun's heart suddenly flashed with a trace of inexplicable fear. One must know that even he might not be able to do this. However, Rong Xiu sighed. With just a light lift of his hand, he did it easily. As if it was effortless. Mo Yun had long heard many rumors about Rong Xiu. He knew that this man was not easy to deal with. However, he did not expect him to be so heaven-defying. Such strength had long surpassed the strength of an ordinary venerable god expert. On the other side, Luo Yan and the others who were about to give chase also stopped in their tracks when they saw this scene, and their expressions were complicated. Forcefully freezing the collapsing void. How did that Rong Xiu do it? An elder said in disbelief, almost unable to believe what he saw. They were also venerable gods, but if they were to make a move, they would definitely not be able to do so. If he's so powerful, why didn't he make a move earlier? If he really wants to fight with us, I'm afraid it'll be another tough battle. Another elder was also deeply worried. Previously, their attention was focused on Chu Liyue, and they did not pay much attention to other things. However, when Rong Xiu made a move, they finally realized that something was wrong. Since he's so powerful, isn't it intentional that he's been watching from the sidelines? Is he too confident in Chu Liyue, or is there another reason? They could not figure out these things and they became more and more flustered. Moreover, the strength that Rong Xiu had displayed had far exceeded their expectations. Luo Yan stared at Rong Xiu's figure, and his hands gradually clenched into fists. If Rong Xiu stopped him, then what happened later would be difficult to proceed according to plan. Now he vaguely understood why Nan Yifan was so afraid of Rong Xiu. Boom! The blood sacrifice formation hung in the sky, and blood qi filled the sky. Crazy power wreaked havoc everywhere, and Tianlei was still falling one after another. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1895. The next moment, Chu Liyue's figure rushed out of the dazzling golden light that enveloped the sky. Everyone immediately looked over. The woman's red dress fluttered in the wind. She had black hair, snow-white skin, and bright eyes. The corners of her eyes and the tip of her brows were filled with intense battle intent. She was completely unscathed. For a moment, everyone present had different reactions. The people from the 13th U naturally heaved a sigh of relief. However, the people from the Black Sword sect in the Nan family had dark expressions. It was one thing for Rong Xiu to be so heaven-defying, but how could Chu Liyue, a mere high god, be so strong as well? Even her eminence might not be able to escape unscathed from the collapsing void. How could she? More importantly, the place where Chu Liyue was swallowed by the void and charged out of it was not the same. There was a deep valley in between. Why does it seem like Rong Xiu already knew that she would come out from there and purposely went there early to wait? That's impossible, right? Who would be able to guess this? Who doesn't know that once a cultivator enters the void, even they don't know where they will be sent to? Not to mention Rong Xiu. But the current situation doesn't seem right, the elders of the Nan family discussed in low voices. Luo Yin didn't say anything, but his expression turned even uglier. The more the other party acted like this, the more difficult it was to deal with. He raised his head to take a look. The blood sacrifice array was still operating. People from the Black Sword sect were rushing over and joining in. This caused the blood sacrifice array to become stronger and stronger. But, even though the Tianlei had almost completely destroyed the rolling mountain range, Chu Liyue was still safe and sound. This couple was simply one weirder than the other. Screech. Tuanzi let out a clear cry, drew a reddish-gold ray of light in midair, and rapidly flew toward Chu Liyue. Everyone had mixed feelings. At first, they thought that Chu Liyue was able to dodge so many attacks because of the reddish-gold celestial phoenix's help. But what happened now was like a slap to their faces. Even if Chu Liyue relied on his own strength, he could still move around like a fish in water. Rong Xiu. Chu Liyue finally heaved a sigh of relief after escaping from the chaotic space and the thick darkness. When that familiar handsome and enchanting face came into view, her hanging heart immediately calmed down a lot. Rong Xiu reached out to her. Come here. Chu Liyue walked forward. Crack. Suddenly, the sound of something breaking could be heard. Chu Liyue was shocked and quickly looked over. It was the void that was forcefully frozen by Rong Xiu, and there was a crack. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes and immediately went forward. He grabbed Chu Liyue's hand and took her into his arms. The next moment, just as he turned around, the space behind him finally broke free from the huge golden net and collapsed again. Countless fine golden lights scattered in all directions. A terrifying force rushed toward the surroundings. Rong Xiu took a step and already moved to another position with Chu Liyue. Dumpling followed closely behind. It flapped its wings and left behind a flame to block that force. Although it couldn't completely block that violent force, it still gave Chu Liyue and Rong Xiu enough time to leave. A loud bang was heard. Chu Liyue leaned on Rong Xiu's arms and looked over his shoulder. The space was collapsing more and more. More and more black was spreading between heaven and earth. Chu Liyue's heart suddenly tightened. Rong Xiu's strength could only temporarily suppress a small area. But looking at the current situation, the entire Peach Blossom Cove would be affected. Digression. Happy New Year to everyone. Continued at 6 p.m., mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1896. How was it? Rong Xiu asked the person in his arms in a low voice. Chu Liyue retracted her gaze. The two looked into each other's eyes. She nodded slightly. Everything went well. There was no need for any superfluous words. Their minds were connected, so he naturally knew what she was planning to do. That's good. Rong Xiu's thin lips curved into a smile. Although she wasn't injured, she must have used up a lot of energy after going through several rounds of bombardment. It wouldn't be easy if she didn't get anything out of it after working so hard. Fortunately, she always knew what she was doing. It was the same this time. Do you want to continue? Rong Xiu asked. He looked down at the black shield in her hand. A small part of the rust on it had already peeled off. Faint light could be seen lingering on it. The secret text engraved on it was gradually revealing its original appearance. Chu Liyue nodded, then frowned slightly. But there's nothing here. We have to find another place. It was a rare opportunity. Of course she had to continue. However, she had already tested all the places here. There was nothing she needed at the bottom of the remaining mountains. Therefore she had to continue fighting this battle, but she had to find another place. Rong Xiao nodded with a calm expression. He was not surprised at all. Then let's change. Peach Blossom Dock was vast. This place was just a corner of it. When Chu Luiyue said that she wanted to search the entire Peach Blossom Dock, he had already expected such a situation. Chu Luiyue nodded and looked at the black shield in her hand again. As the rust on it peeled off, the weight of this thing was increasing. Chu Luiyue was already having a hard time holding it with one hand. She started to circulate the force in her body to reduce the weight. However, this action consumed an enormous amount of his strength. Fortunately, the force in her dantian was abundant. It wasn't a problem for her to deal with this for the time being. She just didn't know what would happen in the end. Chu Luiyue quickly put these thoughts away. She walked out of Rong Xiao's arms. Let's split up. Rong Xiao knew that she had other plans, so he didn't ask and just squeezed her hand. Be careful, I'll stay with you. Chu Luiyue's heart warmed and she held his hand. His dry and warm palm emitted a comforting warmth that made her feel at ease. She didn't say anything. She just took a deep look at Rong Xiao, her eyes bright. With Rong Xiao around, she could always feel at ease. The two of them looked at each other for a moment. After that, Chu Luiyue turned around, tapped the ground with the tip of his foot, and dashed forward. Dumpling followed closely behind. The figures of man and beast quickly disappeared into the distance. Rong Xiao, on the other hand, chose another direction and kept a distance from them, following them at a leisurely pace. Everyone was stunned. What are these two doing? Since Rong Xiao went to bring them out, why did he let Chu Luiyue leave alone? Isn't he worried at all with the turbulence in all directions? The people of Black Sword Sect and Nan family were stunned. They couldn't figure out what Rong Xiao and Chu Luiyue's motive for doing this. The 13 Yu guards were shocked at first, but they quickly chose to accept it. Judging from the situation, it's their master who wants to do this. Then there's nothing to worry about. Sun Yi moved. Follow them. Yes. As soon as he gave the order, Sanson and the others immediately responded, and then chased after him. They didn't care what their master wanted to do. They only knew that no matter what, they had to follow their master. Everything happened too quickly. By the time the rest of the people reacted, a few people, including the 13 Yu guards, had already left with Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiao. Seeing their figures getting further and further away, Mo Yun and the others finally regained their senses. Vice Sect Master, they're running away. Someone said anxiously. Mo Yun's face seemed to be covered with a thick layer of ice, stiff and cold. His scarlet eyes were filled with killing intent that was about to overflow. Of course he could see that. But the key was, where were they planning to go? No, perhaps he should ask what Chu Luiyue wanted to do. The two of them seemed to have said something, but he was still some distance away from them and couldn't hear it. But judging from their reactions afterward, it wasn't hard to guess that it was Chu Luiyue's idea to leave on their own. She hasn't had enough trouble here, and now she wants to run further away? Activate the second level of the blood sacrifice formation. Mo Yun gave the order without any hesitation. Anyway, he had to kill this person today. When the people of Black Sword Sect heard this, they all looked hesitant. Mo Lin hesitated for a moment but still spoke. Vice Sect Master, the blood sacrifice formation is very powerful, and it consumes a lot of energy. If we activate the second level, it will definitely cause more chaos. At that time, it will be even more difficult to capture them. Mo Yun looked at him with a cold smile. Mo Lin, you've become so bold now that you don't even listen to my orders? Mo Lin's face paled and he hurriedly explained. Vice Sect Master, this subordinate definitely didn't mean that. This subordinate just felt that this blood sacrifice formation doesn't seem to have much effect on Shangguanyu. The dozens of people from Black Sword Sect who followed them here had already made their move. Tianlei, which was summoned here, couldn't be said to not be terrifying. Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible to destroy this mountain range in such a short period of time. But what about Chu Luiyue? She was completely unharmed. She clearly had an extremely powerful trump card that allowed her to deal with such a terrifying attack easily. If they wanted to activate the second level of the blood sacrifice formation, they would need an extremely large amount of energy to support it. If that was the case, they might not be able to do anything to Chu Luiyue, but these people from Black Sword Sect would most likely be in trouble. Others might not know, but Mo Lin, who was from Black Sword Sect, knew all of this. The reason why the blood sacrifice formation was so powerful and could erupt with so much power was because once this formation was activated, it would crazily steal and devour the essence and blood of the people who activated it. If it was light, they would be injured and their future and lifespan would be damaged. If it was heavy, they would die. The cold smile on Mo Yun's face gradually faded. In its place was an undisguised anger and killing intent. Then, do you have a better idea? He asked in an extremely cold voice. Sensing that something was wrong with his aura, Mo Lin's blood seemed to have stopped flowing. No, this subordinate is useless, Chi. Before he could finish his sentence, Mo Yun had already raised his hand. A black and red origin power surged out from his palm. It transformed into a long whip and coiled around Mo Lin's neck. Then, with a flick of his wrist, Mo Lin's body flew uncontrollably onto the huge blood sacrifice formation. In almost an instant, that figure was swallowed by the surging blood chi. Digression, Kana slowly updating, at around 6:30 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1897. Molin only let out a short and hurried scream before he quickly fell silent. Soon, when the blood faded, there was only a skeleton left in the middle of the blood sacrifice array. There were only a few pieces of scarlet flesh hanging on the bones. It was extremely bloody. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Some of them could not help but turn around and vomit. Actually, to the people of Ink Sword Sect, they had seen all kinds of bloody and cruel scenes. However, the scene in front of them still had a huge impact on them. Especially when the person who died was Mo Lin. He was Mo Yun's confidant. Previously, when Lan Qingfeng was in trouble, Mo Lin did not take his life. Mo Yun even gave him a chance to make up for his mistake by meritorious deeds. However, now, Mo Yun had directly taken action and used such a terrifying and cruel method to end Mo Lin's life. What confidant? What importance? Anyone who dared to disobey Mo Yun's orders would end up like this. Mo Yun was such a person. Who else wants to object? Mo Yun looked around and asked coldly. No one spoke. Even those who had a strong reaction and were retching were so scared that their faces turned pale. They quickly stopped. Dead silence. It was not the first time they knew that Mo Yun was ruthless. However, today Mo Yun's actions had refreshed their understanding of him. Mo Lin's skeleton was being crushed by the power of the blood sacrifice array. That voice made one's heart turn cold. At this time, who would dare to stand out and say, no? Mo Yun nodded with satisfaction. This was the effect he wanted. It was not easy to cultivate a subordinate who was convenient to use, but it was not a pity to lose him. At most, he could choose another one in the future. After all, Ink Sword Sect did not lack people the most. Mo Yun crossed his hands in front of him. Blood sacrifice array second level, open. The dark clouds in the sky were gathering more and more. The thick, nauseating smell of blood permeated the air. Chu Luiwa looked back and frowned slightly. The blood sacrifice array seemed to have changed. Mo Yun had made up his mind to fight to the death and kill her. In fact, she was not afraid of Tianlei, which they had summoned. However, she still felt a little uneasy in her heart. This was because the space around her had been collapsing along the way. Between heaven and earth, violent energy collided in all directions, tearing apart countless spatial cracks. Although she had stayed in the Peach Blossom Cove before, she had never caused such a huge commotion. Looks like I have to end this as soon as possible, Chu Liwei thought to himself. As long as he could find the remaining ones as soon as possible and completely peel off the rust on the black shield, this matter would come to an end. At that time, the collapsed void of the Peach Blossom dock should be able to repair itself. A slight fluctuation suddenly came from the distant horizon. Chu Liu's heart stirred as he looked into the distant sky. The Peach Blossom dock's enchantment fell from the sky at the point where the heavens and earth connected. That was where the energy fluctuation had come from. Chu Liu's heart sank slightly. Even the barrier was affected? There was no time to lose. He had to end the battle quickly. As this thought flashed through his mind, Chu Liwei once again circulated the origin power in his body. He rushed forward at an even faster speed. The commotion here was too big. Very quickly, many people in the Peach Blossom Dock City were alerted. What's going on over there? You still don't know? That's Ink Sword Sect chasing after the people of the U residence. U residence? Third boss? How is this possible? Isn't the relationship between Third Boss and Ink Sword Sect very good? Why would Ink Sword Sect suddenly attack the people of the U residence? How can it be fake? I saw them chasing out of the city with my own eyes. Other than Ink Sword Sect, there was another group of people who seemed to be involved in the chase as well. The group that came seemed to be the Nan family of the Divine Ruins world. The leader seemed to be the young master of the Nan family. However, their target was not Third Boss. Do you still remember that some people came to the U residence a while ago? This time, Ink Sword Sect and Nan family were going to deal with them. Didn't they say that they were third boss's friends? What friends? Among those people there was the holy son of the Yintian Tower, Rong Xiu, and his new princess consort, Shang Guanyu. The Ink Sword Sect and Nan family joined forces to chase after the two of them. Many people sucked in a breath of cold air when they heard this. Rong Xiu, Shang Guanyu. These two names were like thunder in the ears of the people of the Divine Ruins world recently. Even the Peach Blossom Dock, which was located at the border of the Divine Ruins world, had heard of them. It couldn't be helped. What happened at the wedding ceremony of the two people was too shocking. Because of this, the people were even more confused. It's actually the two of them. Didn't they just get married at the Yintian Tower not long ago? Why would they suddenly come to the Peach Blossom Dock? I heard that third boss is from Shang Guanyu. That's not the point. The point is, aren't Rong Xiu and Shang Guanyu close to the two primordial divine beast clans? What exactly did they do to make the people of the Black Sword Sect and the Nan family hate them so much, to the point that they would rather offend such existences than kill the two of them? This was what everyone couldn't figure out. They are still fighting. Suddenly, a cry of surprise came from the crowd. Everyone's expression changed when they looked over. The sky in the distance was already covered by layers of dark clouds. Several Tianlei surged in the sky, and its aura was terrifying. The terrifying collision caused the endless void to collapse. However, at this moment, a petite figure in a red dress was flying across the sky at high speed. Wherever it passed, silver and red starlight intertwined like a surging river. That's a godly realm? Someone couldn't help but mumble in shock. Didn't they say that Shang Guanyu is only a high god? How can she use such a terrifying godly realm? They were still quite a distance away from that place, but they could still faintly feel that astonishing aura and pressure. This is bad. The barrier of Peach Blossom Dock is about to collapse. Someone exclaimed in shock. Is she going to destroy Peach Blossom Dock? Digression. I'm tired. I want to rest. That's all for today. I'll make it up to you later. Mwah. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 1898. It's not because of her, it's because of the Ink Sword Sect. Another cry of surprise came from the crowd. Many people flew up one after another and looked in that direction. At this time, half of the sky was covered by thick black clouds and the sky was dark. Furthermore, the clouds were still rapidly spreading towards the city from that side. Tianlei was moving crazily in the clouds. A huge blood-red totem hung in the air. That's the Ink Sword Sect's totem? Some sharp-eyed people recognized the appearance of the totem and murmured in shock. This Tianlei, it's obviously because of them. It's them? A young man in the crowd suddenly said with certainty. This is the Ink Sword Sect's usual method. Their monthly assessment was actually the same method they used to pass the test. As long as a few people work together and set up a similar formation, they can quickly attract Tianlei. They used these heavenly lightning to screen out the cultivators who were taking part in the assessment. Only those who were talented enough and strong enough would be able to survive this round. As for the rest, they were the ones who took the lives of the rest. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The street was dead silent for a moment, and then a commotion broke out. Is this real? Those people are all dead? It can't be, right? Only 10 or 20% of the Black Sword Sect's monthly assessment are able to pass. If the remaining ones all die, then wouldn't the number of people they've killed over the past 1 or 2 years be countless? This brother, you should be careful with your words. If the Ink Sword Sect's people hear it, the man snorted. So what if they hear it? I saw it with my own eyes, it's definitely not fake. Besides, it's been so long, haven't any of you suspected that those who failed to enter the Ink Sword Sect all left the Peach Blossom Cove and never appeared again? The crowd fell silent. Actually, it wasn't that no one had suspected this, but the Ink Sword Sect was too powerful in the Peach Blossom Cove. Even if there were people who had doubts, not many would dare to verify it. Now that someone suddenly said this, it naturally caused many people's hearts to waver. If you have the time to doubt the truth, why don't you think about what to do next? The Black Sword Sect was clearly determined to kill Rong Xiu and Shang Guanyu. They were willing to pay any price to do so. Even Mo Yun personally took action. If the Peach Blossom Dock really collapses, at that time, it will be difficult for everyone to escape death. The man's voice was deep and powerful, causing many people's hearts to tighten. They were not stupid and knew that this was definitely not an exaggeration. In an instant, many people felt discontent and resentment towards the Black Sword Sect. It doesn't matter if you want to kill someone or if you want to die. But you can't let so many people from Peach Blossom Cove die with you, right? By creating such a huge commotion, wasn't it obvious that they wanted everyone in the city to suffer as well? If the Peach Blossom dock was destroyed, none of the people here would be able to escape. Then what should we do now? Someone asked hurriedly. The man pondered for a moment. According to what I know, their formation is very strange. The more people that participate, the stronger it becomes. Just now, I saw that Mo Yun had already sent out a signal to gather the people from the Black Sword sect. I think he wants them to go and help. In my opinion, why don't we go and stop the people from the Black Sword sect first? If fewer people go, the formation won't have more power to support it. Naturally, it won't work. Many people looked at each other when they heard this. Is this feasible? That's the Black Sword sect we're talking about. With so few people, can we be a match for them? That's right. Moreover, if Mo Yun decides to punish us, the man raised his eyebrows. Everyone, if we don't stop the Black Sword sect today, we don't even know if we can survive until tomorrow. Moreover, the Black Sword sect has been tyrannical in the Peach Blossom dock for a long time. It's time for them to learn a lesson. Isn't that right? In any case, today Duan Qingxuan will fight the Black Sword sect to the end. If you want it, then follow me. If you don't dare, I won't force you. Anyway, life and death are predestined. Everyone, please do as you wish. After he finished speaking, he actually pushed off the ground with the tip of his foot and headed straight in the direction of the Ink Sword sect. Brother Duan, we'll go with you. Me too. We'll go too. The Black Sword sect killed a few of my brothers. We've wanted to take revenge for this for a long time. At this critical moment, many people gritted their teeth and made the decision to follow Duan Qingxuan. Actually, Duan Qingxuan was right. Even if it was for themselves, they had to take action this time. The Black Sword sect had already disregarded the safety of the entire Peach Blossom dock. Why should they show mercy? More and more people headed towards the Black Sword sect. Soon, they met the people who were coming out of the Black Sword sect and were planning to head towards Mo Yun. Seeing this, the people were even more certain of their guesses. The Black Sword sect was truly willing to gamble with the strength of their entire sect. Stop them. Duan Qingxuan shouted and took the lead to charge forward. When the people beside him heard this, they immediately made their moves. Before the people of the Black Sword sect could react to what was happening, a fierce battle had already broken out. Both sides quickly clashed. The Black Sword sect had already sent out most of their top forces. In addition, due to the incident with Lan Qingfeng, they had already lost many people. Hence, they did not have the upper hand in the battle with Duan Qingxuan and the others. The news spread quickly. Many people in the Peach Blossom dock rushed over one after another. It was obvious that they wanted to get rid of the people of the Black Sword sect. Seeing that more and more people were coming, the Black Sword sect that was initially dismissive finally panicked. What's going on? Why are there so many people rushing over in such a short time? In a remote courtyard in the west of the city, a figure hurriedly walked in. In the courtyard, a person was standing with his hands behind his back. My lord, Qingxuan and the others have already led their men to the Black Sword sect. We've also mobilized all the troops in the city to head there together. The Black Sword sect is strong on the outside but weak on the inside. We should be able to take them down soon. That person turned around. He had a handsome face and a cold gaze. Was Yanqing. Digression, today's update time is not fixed. Let's read it together at 6 p.m. The epidemic is serious. We've already sealed off the districts and villages here. Everyone should stay at home. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1899. He nodded slightly. You must kill all the people from Ink Sword sect. Leave no one alive. His voice was cold and indifferent as usual. Yes, that person replied. We have been hiding here for a long time, waiting for this day. We will not disappoint you. Yanqing's brows twitched. Back then, it was His Highness who personally appointed you, so he naturally trusts you. The man chuckled. I thought we would have to wait a little longer, but His Highness and the Princess Consort arrived so quickly. It must be third boss's doing. If he hadn't started a business here and wrote to Tsin Yi and the others, they would have to wait even longer. Yanqing pondered for a moment. Do the people of Yu Manor know about you? I don't think so. We spend most of our time scattered around Peach Blossom Cove. Even when we attacked Ink Sword sect this time, we split up and acted separately. If even Ink Sword sect didn't notice, it's impossible for Yu Manor to know. That person chuckled. Don't worry. Before we came here, His Highness told us that if the princess consort's people came, we didn't have to show ourselves. Later on, third boss came and quickly started the business. We didn't join in the fun. If they didn't have to deal with Ink Sword Sect this time, they wouldn't even meet Yan Qing. Originally, we thought that since third boss came here alone, he would be isolated and helpless, so we planned to help him secretly. But we didn't expect third boss to be so capable that he didn't need us at all. Moreover, he built you manor in such a short time. He gave a thumbs up. As expected of the princess consort's people. Very impressive. Hearing this, Yan Qing narrowed his eyes. A seductive and wanton figure suddenly flashed through his mind. He raised his brows slightly. The 13th Yu manor is indeed extraordinary. That person didn't notice the subtle change in his expression and continued to ask. Sir, we have more or less taken control of Ink Sword Sect. Do you want to send people to His Highness and the princess consort's side? No need. Before he could finish speaking, Yan Qing spoke up and rejected his suggestion. Sun Yi and the others have already gone over. Moreover, His Highness and Princess Consort did this intentionally, so there's no need to worry. That person raised his head hesitantly. But, sir, look at the commotion over there. It's almost spreading to the city. Did he really not need their help? Yan Qing lifted his gaze slightly and looked towards the horizon. Under the dark sky, Tianlei surged and the wind howled. Countless voids were collapsing. Large expanses of blackness spread out like a giant beast, about to devour everything. The enchantment of the Peach Blossom Cove was trembling violently, as if it would collapse at any moment. A bright and resplendent silver-red god domain surged like a clear river. A woman with her shoulders and back straight hovered in midair. With a shield in her left hand and a sword in her right, she looked like a god of war. Yan Qing was slightly shocked and murmured in a low voice, "We still don't know who exactly needs reinforcements." Rumble. A bright bolt of heavenly lightning struck down with a loud crash. Chu Liwei looked up with a cold gaze. She had already shifted her position and was extremely far away from Lan Qingfeng. However, Ma Jin sect was chasing after her relentlessly. They had already controlled the blood sacrifice array and lured Tianlei here. The wind howled in her ears. Voids were collapsing in all directions. In the distance, the enchantment of the Peach Blossom Cove was on the verge of collapsing. Chu Liwei felt as if there were countless forces around her that were crazily pulling at her. It was as if they wanted to tear her apart. With a thought, a golden armor quickly covered her body. "Have you had enough fun?" Her gaze was cold as she scolded in a deep voice. Even if Mo Yun and the others were not annoyed, she had already lost her patience. Hearing her voice, Mo Yun was stunned at first. Then, his face turned cold as he sneered. "What? Don't you want to escape? Even if you want to escape, you will need to expend a lot of energy and energy." Chu Liwei clearly wanted to play along with him until the end. However, in the blink of an eye, she stopped and asked this question. It was likely that she could not take it anymore. There was a distance between the two of them. However, Chu Liwei could still hear the arrogance in Mo Yun's voice. She could not help but sneer in her heart. "That's right. I don't want to waste any more time with you." If the Peach Blossom Cove collapsed, even she did not dare to predict the situation. Therefore, she could not afford to waste any more time with these people. Mo Yun raised his voice. "It's too late. Shengguan Yu. Rongxiu. If you had knelt down and admitted defeat at the beginning, we might have left your bodies intact. However, that's impossible now. Ma Jin sect had paid a huge price to hunt down these two people. Although Mo Yun did not care about the lives of these people, he cared about Ma Jin sect's reputation. He had to avenge the slaps from these two people. Chu Liyue's lips suddenly curled up into a smile. Her smile was extremely cold and did not reach her eyes. "Very good. I think so too." As she spoke, she slowly tightened her grip on Scarlet Heaven's sword. Rongxiu, who had been following not far away, saw her expression and suddenly had a thought. 13 asked uneasily. "Big brother, why do I feel that Master is planning to do something?" Yu Jiu nodded and whispered. "I think so too." They had followed Chu Liwei for many years and knew her temperament very well. Master rarely revealed such an expression. Sun Yi suddenly said. "Everyone get ready. Pay attention to your safety. If necessary, retreat at any time." The flesh on 13's cheeks trembled slightly. "Big brother, aren't you too serious? Just listening to it was really scary, okay?" Sun Yi glanced at him indifferently. "I almost forgot. You can stay here safely. After all, you still have that small space. If Master needs anything, you must not be a burden. Do you understand?" This was not a question but an order. 13's face immediately fell. He did not forget. He had always remembered it. Oh. 13 struggled to ask. Big brother, do you mean, you really want Master to do it himself? I think those people from Black Sword Sect are not easy to deal with. Shifang sighed and patted him on the shoulder. Child, you are still young after all. In a while, you will know that the one who is really difficult to deal with is not Black Sword Sect but our Master. When Master is about to flip out, don't hesitate. Don't hesitate. Just retreat. Retreat early to ensure your safety. 13 nodded as if he understood. If even Brother 10 said so, then, perhaps he could be at ease? At this moment, Tianlei had already struck down heavily. Chu Liwen narrowed her eyes, then tapped her toes and went straight for Tianlei. At the same time, a sword aura slashed down horizontally. Scarlet Heaven Sword. A bright rainbow light cut through all obstacles. Luo Yan and the others who were watching from afar were slightly shocked when they saw this scene. She actually wants to take the risk? Even Her Eminence has to be careful when dealing with the power of Tianlei. Does she want to die? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1900. The second layer of the blood sacrifice formation had been activated. Other than expanding the range of its attack, the Tianlei it summoned had also become stronger. This was also why they had initially wanted to join the fight, but in the end they chose to stay where they were and observe. Who knew if Chu Liyue and the rest would be killed by this Tianlei? However, Chu Liyue's actions had exceeded their expectations. Luo Yan placed his hands behind his back and did not speak. He had personally witnessed the combat strength Chu Liyue had displayed in the god-slaying mound. He knew very well that this woman would never do something she was not confident in. If she dared to do this, it meant that she was confident. However, after all, the Black Sword Sect was determined to kill her this time. They had already used all their strength and held nothing back. Could she really handle it? Besides, there was also Rong Xiu. Luo Yan's gaze turned slightly and looked at the tall white figure beside Chu Liyue. Rong Xiu did not move. It seemed that he was going to let her do whatever she wanted. Luo Yan felt inexplicably uneasy. Even at a time like this, these people were still so calm. Could it be that they still had some trump cards that they had not revealed? Let's watch first, Luo Yan ordered. The elders nodded when they heard this. Perhaps this battle would end very soon. Boom. An earth-shattering sound suddenly rang out. The terrifying sword Qi and Tianlei's power fiercely collided. Streaks of silver-white energy spread out in all directions. Chu Liyue's figure had long been swallowed by the dazzling light. Mo Yun sneered and spat out a mouthful of blood. You overestimate yourself. He knew that Chu Liyue might have some ability, but the second layer of the blood sacrifice formation had been activated, and its power was shocking. Even if she had great ability, she would not be able to escape death this time. After killing Chu Liyue, the next one would be Rong Xiu. If he could kill both of them here, then from now on, not only would he be able to make up for his mistakes in front of the sect master, he would also be rewarded handsomely. This thought made Mo Yun faintly excited in his heart. He did not control Lan Qingfeng's matter well. The entire Peach Blossom dock was in an uproar. This was almost a capital offense. Only Rong Xiu and Chu Liyue could save him from this hopeless situation. Therefore he decided to bet the entire Ink Sword Sect. No matter how many casualties there were, as long as he could achieve the result he wanted, nothing else mattered. However, just as Mo Yun was waiting for Chu Liyue to die, a figure suddenly flew out from the lightning that filled the sky. Her figure was tall and slender. It was Chu Liyue. A sword aura shot up into the sky and forcefully split the ball of flickering white light in half. How is this possible? Mo Yun suddenly opened his eyes wide, his eyes filled with horror. The smugness that had just crept up from the corners of his eyes completely froze. He looked extremely embarrassed. However, he couldn't care less right now. There was only one thought left in his mind. Chu Liyue actually split the Tianlei in half? Isn't she a high deity? How can she have such powerful combat power? However, before he could figure it out, he saw the figure again moving against the lightning. She went straight for the rolling dark clouds that almost overturned half the sky. Countless people gasped in shock. There were still several bolts of heavenly lightning accumulated in the clouds. Wasn't she courting death by going there? In the eyes of ordinary people, Chu Liyue was simply tired of living by doing this. Who could survive if they rushed into the sea of lightning? However, Mo Yun looked at the figure from afar. Not only did he not heave a sigh of relief, but he also became more nervous. Ever since they decided to kill the two of them, Chu Liyue's series of actions had far exceeded their expectations. It was shocking. However, every time they thought that she was going to die, she always managed to survive. This time, would she also? As Mo Yun was thinking, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. Then he looked over and saw a bolt of heavenly lightning falling from the sky. Boom. A huge sound spread far and wide, almost deafening. Heavenly lightning striking down was originally not something shocking. But the key point was that this bolt of heavenly lightning was actually flying towards Mo Yun and the rest. When he first saw it, Mo Yun was still in disbelief. It was only when the Tianlei rapidly approached and the terrifying pressure crushed the void inch by inch that the people of Ma Jin sect finally realized the danger. I don't know what method Chu Luiwei used, but she actually made the lightning turn around and attack us. Mo Yun's heart was filled with shock and disbelief, and it quickly turned into anger and shock. It was like seeing a ghost. They were the ones who summoned the Tianlei. Why did it attack them in the end? What did Chu Luiwei do? Quick! Activate the blood sacrifice array's defense. Mo Yun hurriedly urged. The Tianlei's strength was shocking. If he was at his peak, it would not be a problem. However, the blood sacrifice array consumed a lot of force and mental energy. After the series of torment earlier, he could no longer unleash his full strength. The only way was to activate the blood sacrifice array. However, just as he finished speaking, a painful groan was heard. Ah, this sound was short and hurried. It only appeared for a moment and disappeared very quickly. Mo Yun's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately turned back to look. Beside the blood sacrifice array, one of the Ma Jin sect guards spat out a mouthful of blood due to exhaustion and collapsed. However, before he hit the ground, a surge of energy suddenly surged out of the blood sacrifice array and swallowed him. That person felt that something was wrong and immediately tried to break free and escape. However, all the energy in his body was already exhausted. He did not even have the strength to lift his arms. How could he escape from the blood sacrifice array? In the blink of an eye, his figure completely disappeared. Everyone fell silent. Their eyes were filled with panic. They were very clear that this person's outcome would be exactly the same as Mo Lin's. At this moment, a slight cracking sound could be heard from the blood sacrifice array. Mo Yun immediately focused his eyes and looked over, only to see that a crack had suddenly appeared on the huge blood sacrifice array. His heart sank. The blood sacrifice array's energy was not enough. To maintain the blood sacrifice array's operation, it required an endless supply of energy. The people present had basically exhausted all of their origin power after this period of torment. They were just barely holding on at the moment. Now that one person had suddenly died, the entire blood sacrifice array would be affected. Why aren't they here yet? Mo Yun could not help but scold angrily. Before he came, he had already sent out the summons. Logically speaking, the people in charge of the Ma Jin sect's reinforcements should have arrived by now. However, there was not a single person. Mo Yun looked in the direction of the city. It was empty and there was no movement. Suddenly, a white light flashed in his mind. His pupils shrank. Something had happened to the Ma Jin sect. Digression, not in the right state, staring at the computer for a few hours without writing. The 4th chapter is estimated to be at 7 o'clock, and the 5th chapter might be in arrears. Sorry everyone, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 1901. Black Sword Sect had always been strict with their rules. Once they received an order, they would not disobey it for no reason. Now that so much time had passed, not a single person had arrived. It was certain that something had happened in the city. Mo Yun's chest seemed to be burning fiercely. He clenched his fists tightly, almost grinding his teeth to pieces. Who would attack Black Sword Sect at this time? It was obvious who it was. He suddenly turned around and looked at Rong Xiu and Chu Luiwei. As if sensing his gaze, Rong Xiu, who had been looking at Chu Luiwei, suddenly looked over. The two of them looked at each other from a distance. With just one look, Mo Yun saw the undisguised sarcasm and indifference in Rong Xiu's deep eyes. Mo Yun's heart seemed to have been hit by something. It was them. In that moment, countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Black Sword Sect had many people and their strength was not weak. Even if a portion of them had died, the remaining people's combined battle power was still considerable. No matter what, it should not be that no one came. This could only prove the entire Black Sword Sect was probably in trouble now. But how did Rong Xiu do it? In the entire Peach Blossom Dock, Black Sword Sect dominated. Even the Yu family could not be compared to them. There was no reason for Black Sword Sect to lose. Mo Yun could not figure it out. He had always thought that Black Sword Sect had half of the Peach Blossom Dock under their control. But he did not expect such a thing to happen at such a crucial time. If no one came to help, then this blood sacrifice array would not be able to last much longer. Ah. Just as Mo Yun was thinking about this, another guard was drawn into the blood sacrifice array because he had overdrawn his strength and could not hold on any longer. In the blink of an eye he was reduced to a pile of bones. The power of the blood sacrifice array started to become disordered. Mo Yun started to worry. If this goes on, we won't be able to survive even before Chu Luiyue is killed. At this moment he hated Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue to the core. These two people were truly sinister and cunning to the extreme. Now that he thought about it, he realized that something was amiss. Even Chu Luiyue's escape out of the city from the start was part of her plan. However, it was clearly too late to think about this now. Rumble. Another Tianlei came crashing down, heading straight for the Black Sword sect disciples. Is that Chu Luiyue really a freak? When the elders of the Nan family saw this, their expressions became shocked and solemn. She thought that Chu Luiyue was dead for sure, but now, not only was she fine, she even killed her opponent? He had never seen anyone who could control Tianlei with such ease. Not even gods like them could do that. Luo Yan frowned. He had expected that Chu Luiyue would not admit defeat so easily, but the scene before him still surprised him. In this battle with the Black Sword sect, it was hard to say who would win and who would lose. Right at this moment, a huge roar suddenly came from the horizon. Between heaven and earth, endless energy suddenly surged as if it was boiling. Not good. The barrier of the Peach Blossom Cove has collapsed. One of the elders exclaimed in surprise. In the distance, the enchantment that was glowing faintly in the sky suddenly shattered. The space started to compress. The energy of heaven and earth started to riot. Luo Yan made a prompt decision. Retreat. There were plenty of chances to kill Chu Luiyue, but if she died here today, everything would be gone. Almost at the same time, a large patch of black suddenly appeared in the sky. It was a black hole that was formed when space collapsed. The ground shook violently. The undulating mountain range started to collapse. Countless cracks spread across the ground, and ravines appeared on the ground. For a moment, the sky collapsed and the earth caved in as if it was the end of the world. Digression, I owe you, I'll make up for it later. I'll go straighten out my thoughts and plan. Love you mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1902. Luo Yan and the rest had intended to take advantage of the chaos to escape, but they were quickly pushed back by the raging energy. Looking at the sky that was collapsing inch by inch, listening to the constant cracking sounds coming from the ground, Luo Yan felt as if his body was being torn apart by countless forces. He hurriedly activated his force and set up a barrier around himself. However, that terrifying energy attack still sent chills down their spines. They even had to use all the energy in their bodies to barely stay where they were and not be swept away by the various forces. Luo Yan clenched his fists, his heart thumping so hard that it almost jumped out of his chest. Peach Blossom Cove's barrier had completely collapsed, and they had no way of getting out. Ink Sword Sect and Chu Luiyue wanted everyone to die with them. At the same time, the people in the city also sensed that something was wrong and they all looked up. Not good. Peach Blossom Cove's barrier has been destroyed. With that, countless people began to run out of Peach Blossom Cove in a panic. However, the energy between heaven and earth had completely gone out of control. Those who were slightly stronger could barely hold on, but those who were not were already showing all sorts of reactions. Their faces were pale and their breathing was ragged. Some could not bear the pressure of the rapidly collapsing space and kept spitting out blood. In short, the situation was terrible. Ink Sword Sect was littered with corpses. Previously, the people in the city had all gathered and rushed over, surrounding Ink Sword Sect. Both sides had erupted into an intense battle. There were countless casualties. The air was filled with a thick, suffocating smell of blood. Ink Sword Sect wants all of our lives. Duan Qingchuan was the first to react and he shouted. Everyone else reacted. That's right. If Ink Sword Sect had not insisted on chasing after Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue, if they had not used that terrifying and strange Shen formation, if they had not ignored everything and triggered Tianlei, how could Peach Blossom Cove's barrier have collapsed? Everyone would not have fallen into such a dangerous situation. Intense anger and hatred filled everyone's hearts. The people of Ink Sword Sect, who were already at the end of their rope, sensed the tense and cold atmosphere, and they could not help but feel afraid. At this time, they also understood that Mo Yun and the rest had no intention of coming back to help them. He didn't even care about their lives. The barrier has collapsed. We are completely trapped here. Those who reacted first and tried to escape the Peach Blossom Cove were all stopped by the intertwining spatial turbulence. There were even some who were mercilessly swallowed by the collapsing void and never made it out again. Hearing those people's cries of pain before they died, the people behind them couldn't help but feel scared. It's over. Peach Blossom Dock is completely finished. We're all going to die here today. Someone muttered with a pale face, his eyes filled with despair. Even if I die today, I'll drag the Black Sword sect down with me. In the deathly silent crowd, someone suddenly yelled out in a stern voice. These words were like a falling star, instantly igniting a raging inferno. The battle between both sides became even more intense. The people of the Black Sword sect were already at a disadvantage. Now that the crowd was enraged, they suffered a crushing defeat. Not only the Black Sword sect, but the entire Peach Blossom Cove had fallen into chaos. On the streets, countless people were running back and forth in panic. All kinds of trampling, collisions, and killing occurred continuously. When they realized that the Peach Blossom Cove was in a life-and-death crisis, no one could remain calm. At first, there were still many people who tried to escape from the collapsing barrier. But after the first batch died, the people behind didn't dare to act rashly. They were running to live, not to die. More people had already chosen to give up in despair. In the courtyard of the Black Sword sect, Duan Qingxuan raised his saber and swung it down. At his feet, the corpses of the Black Sword sect people were strewn all over the ground. The sounds of killing continued in the surroundings. It was almost like hell on earth. Brother Duan, the barrier has collapsed. Shouldn't we think of a way to retreat? Someone asked anxiously. Many people looked over when they heard that. After this incident, many people had already subconsciously regarded Duan Qingxuan as their backbone. So now that something had happened, they also subconsciously asked for Duan Qingxuan's opinion. Duan Qingxuan swung his saber and stabbed a fleeing Black Sword sect person to death. Warm blood splattered on his face. He raised his arm and wiped the blood away with his sleeve. Retreat? Oh, to where? His voice was very calm. Those who had stayed in the Peach Blossom Cove long enough would know how terrible the situation was. Although he had been on the Black Sword sect's side, he wasn't completely ignorant of the situation outside. Those who had tried to escape had all failed. Among them there was no lack of powerful people. All of this proved that it was impossible for them to leave this place safely. Then we're just going to wait for death here? Yeah. We can't be completely helpless, right? There are so many people in the Peach Blossom Cove. Why don't we join forces? Maybe we'll have a chance? Seeing that Duan Qingxuan's attitude wasn't optimistic, many people panicked. For a moment, everyone was discussing. Although some of them were already prepared to die, most of them still hoped to survive safely. Duan Qingxuan suddenly raised his head and looked at the horizon. If someone can repair the barrier of the Peach Blossom Cove, maybe we'll have a chance to survive. Everyone fell into a dead silence. How could they not have thought of this? But the key was, this was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. The barrier of the Peach Blossom Cove wasn't man-made. It existed naturally. For thousands of years, the Peach Blossom Cove had never been occupied by anyone because of the existence of this barrier. Now that the barrier had collapsed, the void had collapsed, and the entire Peach Blossom Cove was in chaos. Who could repair the barrier? Everyone was just a mayfly at this moment. They couldn't even struggle. Who could save them? The sky was still collapsing and the ground was shaking violently. The space was shrinking and squeezing inwards. Everyone who was in the middle of it could already feel the suffocating pressure. More and more people couldn't withstand the pressure and gradually collapsed. Most of the people from the Black Sword sect had been killed. But what was the use of that? If the Peach Blossom Cove was destroyed, all of them would die here. Duan Qingxuan held the long saber in his hand tightly. His lips were pursed as he looked at the distant sky, as if he was waiting for something. Boom! A loud sound was suddenly heard. Then a faint blue flame shot up into the sky. It was a cluster of flames that suddenly surged out from under the crumbling mountain range. Mo Yun and the rest had seen this scene too many times before. So they didn't take it to heart. However, before they could react, the ravines on the ground of the mountain range exploded like a string of cannons. Boom! Boom! Demonic and crazy flames covered the sky and covered the earth. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1903. Everyone was stunned. This flame. Isn't it too much? On the mountain, in the forest, and in the valley. Even in every corner of the city, there were flames rushing out rapidly. The entire Peach Blossom Dock was engulfed in a sea of fire. The dark and gloomy sky was now illuminated by endless flames. The blue flames leaped and roasted the hearts of countless people. How could this be? How could this be? There is such a hidden danger under the Peach Blossom Dock? What are those flames? Countless questions lingered in the minds of the people, causing them to panic. The aura of this flame was tyrannical and extremely powerful. The Peach Blossom Dock's barrier had collapsed and no one could enter or leave. Once the flames spread out, none of them would be able to escape. The discussion gradually died down. Someone was sobbing. Everyone in the city was in complete despair. Now all they could do was wait for their deaths. Chi. A stream of light suddenly flew out from a cluster of flames. The stream of light drew a straight line in the sky and headed straight for Chu Luiyue. Many people saw this scene. What is that? I don't know. I didn't see it clearly. It seems like this is not the first time she has done this. Something seemed to fly out from the flames on the mountains outside the city. She seems to be looking for something in the flames. I remember now. The people of Black Sword Sect were on guard against Lan Qingfeng. They seemed to be looking for something too. Everyone in Peach Blossom Dock knew what had happened during this period of time. Therefore, when someone reminded them, many people immediately connected the dots. With so many pairs of eyes watching, this conjecture could almost be completely confirmed. But, what was that thing that flew out from the flames? Countless people looked at Chu Luiyue. Of course Chu Luiyue knew what it was. When the stream of light flew over from below, she held her breath and held the black shield in her hand tightly. Crack. A familiar cracking sound was heard. Then a piece of rust peeled off from the shield. A corner of the secret text was gradually revealed. Buzz. The stream of light flew to Chu Luiyue. A thin blue crystal gently covered the area where the rust had peeled off. The sparkling light gradually shrouded it. The shield in her hand became heavier and heavier. However, this was just the beginning. The sound of air being torn apart came from all directions. Chu Luiyue hovered in the air and looked down. Countless flames had already ignited in the huge Peach Blossom Dock. Pieces of thin crystals flew out of it, wrapped in a brilliant light. The black shield seemed to be summoned by some kind of power and began to tremble. Chu Luiyue's hand was already numb, and her knuckles had turned white from using too much strength. However, she still used all her strength to hold the black shield firmly in her hands. Crisp cracking sounds could be heard. Pieces after pieces of rust peeled off the shield. At the same time, a terrifyingly powerful pressure. Puff. The blood in Chu Luiyue's body flowed rapidly, and her force was almost boiling. She suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and her face instantly turned incomparably pale. The bright red blood stain at the corner of her lips made her look even more haggard. The slight trembling of her body showed that she was under tremendous pressure at this moment. However, her black eyes were cold and gloomy. She was actually exceptionally calm. His eyes were burning with a raging fighting spirit. Countless streams of light came from all directions of the Peach Blossom Dock. Bang! The golden armor on Chu Luiyue's body suddenly shattered under the impact of the surrounding spatial turbulence. Digression. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1904. Rong Xiu's expression froze, and a cold glint flashed across his eyes. He bent his long legs and was about to go forward when he saw the black shield in front of Chu Luiyue, which was already covered by a lustrous light, and he stopped in his tracks. At this moment it was useless for anyone to go over. She could only rely on herself. Seeing this, the other members of the 13U sect also looked worried. Master. Xin Yi raised his hand and signaled for them to calm down. Big brother? This time, not only the 13U sect members, but even Sanson was a little hesitant. Master's situation didn't look too good, however. Xin Yi's expression was calm and didn't allow any disobedience. Although they were anxious, they could only stay where they were obediently. Hiss. Sanson wanted to say something, but he suddenly frowned. Third brother, what's wrong? 13 hurriedly asked. Sanson waved his hand and his chubby face scrunched up. Nothing. It's just that small space is about to break. As soon as he said that, a stream of light flew up from the direction of Qingshui Cliff. That thin layer of blue was actually wrapped in a blazing flame and landed on the shallow spot where the rust had peeled off. Boom. Qingshui Cliff also started to collapse, as if it was being squeezed by the surrounding void turbulence. Large pieces of rock fell from the mountain. A loud sound was heard. Sanson's eyelids twitched violently, and he felt extremely pained. My baby. If that small space was destroyed, the loss would be immeasurable. As soon as he thought of this, his heart ached so much that it twitched. However, at this moment, Chu Luiyue, who was suspended in midair, suddenly raised his hand. A silver-red divine realm flew out like a heavenly river pouring down. In the blink of an eye, it covered Qingshui Cliff. The fine light flickered quietly, and it was especially eye-catching in this chaotic situation. Sanson's eyes instantly lit up. Master had actually personally taken action to protect that small space of his. Master is too good. Oh. Sanson's eyes were almost brimming with tears. First it was despair, then it was hope. This feeling of rising and falling was simply too satisfying. His little heart couldn't take it anymore. Okay? Sun Yi glanced at him indifferently and raised his eyebrows slightly, but he didn't say anything. So many mountains had been destroyed previously, but there was no movement on Master's side. However, just as there was movement on Qingshui Cliff, Master chose to attack without hesitation. This could only prove that Master was also very reluctant to part of that small space. However, seeing how agitated Sanson was, Sun Yi decided to be kind and not expose her. Master's God's realm. Wu Yao stared at the divine domain that was slowly flowing like a waterfall as he muttered to himself. Fifth brother, you feel it too? Yu Jiu nodded. I have the same feeling. When Qingshui of Qingshui, to cliff of the cliffs Qingjin. This was not the first time they had seen their master display his divine domain, but this time, it seemed like his aura and pressure were the strongest. God's domain can become stronger? 13 was at a loss. Don't exalted gods only have a chance to improve their god's realm after breaking through to venerable god? He was only a rank 7 warrior now and was still quite a distance away from exalted gods. Therefore he had heard a lot about exalted gods from Sun Yi and the others. That's true for ordinary people, but our master isn't ordinary. Shifang sighed and then looked aggrieved. It's a pity that my vegetable garden? I'm afraid it's going to be destroyed again. On the first day he came to Peach Blossom Cove, he started to plant vegetables in the backyard excitedly. He thought that everything would go smoothly this time, but who knew that such a big thing would happen again? That was great. He couldn't eat the vegetables that he had painstakingly grown again. Shifang felt very sad when he thought of what had happened in the past few days. After a rough calculation, he realized that it had been a long time since he had a proper meal. Everyone looked at him. At this time, everyone in Peach Blossom Cove was in danger and was afraid of dying here. Shifang was the only one who was still thinking about those dishes. However, they quickly retracted their gazes. Shifang had always been like this and they were already used to it. They looked at Chu Luiyue in unison. They didn't know if their master could really deal with the situation in front of them alone this time. This Shangguanyu? There's really a problem. The elders of the Nan family became even more flustered when they saw the flames that were ignited everywhere. If Peach Blossom Cove is completely destroyed, does she think she can survive alone? They thought that the people of Black Sword Sect were crazy enough, but they didn't expect her to be even crazier. They wanted to drag everyone down with them. Luo Yan's face was gloomy as he suddenly took out a red scroll. The scroll was shrouded in a layer of faint light. A heavy pressure was emitted from it. When the people around him saw the scroll, they were all shocked. Flowing Cloud Flying Diagram? The Flowing Cloud Flying Diagram was a venerable divine artifact and the treasure of the Nan family. Unlike other venerable divine artifacts that were used for killing and were extremely aggressive, this treasure only had one use. No matter who the holder was, they could use it to forcefully open up space and teleport the holder to another place in an extremely short amount of time. In layman's terms, this was a teleportation formation that could be carried around. Most people might think that this thing was very ordinary and nothing special. However, only those who truly understood its power would know how powerful this thing was. During ordinary battles, this flowing cloud flying diagram might not be of use, but at critical moments, it could save one's life. Just like now. The void of Peach Blossom Cove collapsed and the barrier collapsed. The energy of heaven and earth was almost completely out of control. Luo Yan and the others had already tried to leave, but they all failed. Now their only hope was the flowing cloud flying diagram. But wasn't this thing with young master? An elder said in confusion. Halfway through his sentence, he suddenly realized that he had said something wrong and hurriedly stopped. He looked at Luo Yan nervously. Luo Yan's face was expressionless. Before we set off, young master specially gave this thing to me for safekeeping. Originally, I wanted to return to the Nan family directly after killing Rong Xiu and Shangguanyu. The elders fell silent. They looked at each other with their eyes and nose. In fact, they didn't believe Luo Yan's words. The flowing cloud flying diagram had a very high status in the Nan family. It had always been safeguarded by the patriarch. This time, it was likely that the patriarch had secretly given the item to the eldest young master to increase his leverage. Even if he couldn't win, he could escape. Nan Yuxing should know the importance of this treasure. Why would he give it to Luo Yan for no reason? It was obvious that he could use it himself and it could even protect his own life. But at this time, these questions were obviously unsolvable. Swoosh. Luo Yan waved his hand and the flowing cloud flying diagram quickly unfolded. Digression, there's the last update at 7 o'clock. Sorry, I'm trying my best to adjust these few days in February so that I can resume the update as soon as possible. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1905. A beam of brilliant light flew out from the crimson flowing clouds flying diagram. Then the light slowly spread out. Everywhere it passed, the space froze. The light rippled like water, and without anyone noticing, it had already connected to the void on the other side. From afar, it looked like a door with light flowing and floating quietly. Luo Yan made up his mind and walked forward. As long as he could use the flowing clouds flying diagram to leave this place, everything else would be easy. His speed was very fast. With a single step, he stepped into the swaying waves. The surrounding spatial turbulence seemed to have been isolated at this moment. Luo Yan pursed his lips and calmed down. The few elders standing behind him also became slightly excited when they saw the situation. The flowing clouds flying diagram was indeed worthy of its reputation. It seemed that they could really leave this place with this thing. However, at this moment, a sword aura suddenly broke through the air. Luo Yan knew that something was wrong and could only dodge. The half of his leg that had just stepped into the flowing clouds flying diagram was forced to withdraw again. A sharp and cold aura flashed in front of him. Luo Yan did not even have time to set up a barrier in front of him and a deep wound had already appeared on his face. A stinging pain came. Luo Yan's heart beat violently, almost jumping out of his chest. If his reaction had been half a second slower, then this sword chi might have sliced off his head. After the shock, there was a monstrous anger. He raised his head and looked at Chu Luiyue with hatred. She could not even protect herself, but she still had the mood to attack them. Shangguan Yu? If you want to die, no one will stop you. Don't drag everyone down with you. Luo Yan shouted in a deep voice. The deep and cold voice spread far and wide in the sky. Chu Luiyue's lips curled into an extremely cold smile. Luo Yan, I can't agree with your words. From the beginning to the end, I have never thought of dying. I just don't want to see the person who harmed me live well. You. Luo Yan was furious and was about to refute when a strange voice suddenly sounded in his ears. He turned his head and his eyes widened in shock. Unknowingly, a layer of reddish gold flames had covered the flowing cloud flying diagram. At this moment, it was burning brightly. Under the influence of the flames, the spreading layer of light gradually dimmed. That was the space leading to the exit, which was gradually being sealed. Luo Yan almost couldn't breathe. This woman is so ruthless. She was the one who caused the current situation, yet she didn't allow anyone to leave. She was really crazy. However, at the same time, a deeper question suddenly appeared in his mind. The flowing cloud flying diagram was a genuine venerable artifact. Logically speaking, Chu Luiyue's strength alone should not have been able to deal any fatal damage to it. What's that? An elder behind him suddenly saw something and exclaimed in shock. Luo Yan followed his line of sight and saw that there seemed to be a transparent flame within the burning reddish gold flames. The power of the two layers of pressure was far beyond their imagination. This is the karmic fire of the heavenly square cauldron? Luo Yan was experienced and knowledgeable, so he quickly recognized the origin of the transparent flame. When he thought of this, his heart instantly sank. The flowing cloud flying diagram was actually one of the 10 great divine artifacts. However, compared to the heavenly square cauldron, it was still slightly inferior. After all, it was not used for battle. To put it bluntly, it was a trump card used to escape and save one's life. However, the heavenly square cauldron was different. At this moment, the power of both sides was intertwined, and the difference was immediately apparent. What is she trying to do? Luo Yan's heart was filled with hatred. However, Chu Luiyue's attention did not seem to be on this side anymore. She kept the red cloud sword in her hand and held the black shield with both hands. Most of the rust on it had already peeled off, and the heavy pressure was almost suffocating her. The lustrous glow enveloped it, and the engravings on it were faintly discernible. Its weight was increasing at an unimaginable speed, so much so that Chu Luiyue could no longer hold the shield with one hand. She had to use both hands. Vigorous force continuously surged out from her dantian and into her limbs and bones. The force was burning wildly. Fine beads of sweat continuously appeared on her full and smooth forehead. Her face grew paler and paler, and only her pair of dark eyes seemed to be burning with flames. The sky had almost completely collapsed and the ground was filled with ravines. Everywhere was filled with burning flames. At a glance it was like purgatory. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and held her breath. The buzzing sound from the black shield reverberated in her ears, almost causing the force in her body to boil. On the other side, the people of Ink Sword Sect were also in a terrible situation. Chu Luiyue had forcefully mobilized the Tianlei to bombard them, and each strike was fatal. The people of Ink Sword Sect had already depleted their strength and spirit due to the blood sacrifice formation. How could they withstand such a terrifying attack now? After a series of attacks, more than half of Ink Sword Sect was dead or injured. The huge blood sacrifice formation also started to churn violently. Inch by inch, Mo Yun knew that there was nothing he could do. His body trembled, and his heart was filled with resentment and resentment. Boom. Finally, the blood sacrifice formation completely collapsed. The people of Ink Sword Sect standing at the edge could not escape in time, and were all swallowed by the violent blood chi and energy. Mo Yun also suffered a great impact and his body flew backward. Finally, his eyes were completely filled with a scarlet color. Just when everyone thought that he was done for, they suddenly saw him forcefully stabilize his body. The next moment he looked at Chu Luiyue. "Sheng Guanyu, you forced me to do it this time." His cold and gloomy voice was filled with a violent and cold killing intent. At the same time, a totem suddenly flashed between his eyebrows. Chu Luiyue looked up, and her eyes were instantly covered with a thick layer of frost. She could not be more familiar with that totem. Black Demon Cave. The so-called Ink Sword Sect clearly had an extremely close relationship with Black Demon Cave. Black Demon Cave sent you here? Mo Yun sneered. Mo Yun sneered, but he didn't reply as he quickly ran toward Chu Luiyue. The surrounding heaven and earth energy suddenly gathered toward him like crazy. In just a few breaths' time, his strength had recovered to the peak of Supreme God. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1906. After letting go of his last line, Mo Yun no longer had any scruples as he frantically devoured the surrounding energy to forcefully raise his own strength. Seeing that Black Sword Sect was unreliable, he could only rely on himself. Even though the sect leader had repeatedly warned him to be careful and not reveal his identity unless it was absolutely necessary. But now he had no other choice. If this went on, what awaited him was only death. Today, even if he were to die, he would definitely drag these people down with him. However, before Mo Yun could reach Chu Luiyue, he was stopped by someone. A tall and slender figure broke through the air and blocked Mo Yun's path in the blink of an eye. It was Rongxiu. Looking at that noble and devilish face, Mo Yun's heart was filled with hatred. Even at this time, this man's expression was still so calm and composed. It was as if there was nothing in this world that could make him nervous or fearful. The more he was like this, the more intense the emotions in Mo Yun's heart became. Based on what? Based on what, after this battle, those from Black Sword Sect were either dead or injured while these people on the other side were not affected at all. Rongxiu, you are no match for me. Mo Yun shouted sternly. At this point, Mo Yun could see that Peach Blossom Cove was about to be completely destroyed. Everything that they had spent countless manpower and resources to prepare in the past 2 years would all turn to nothing. Even the countless cultivators here would have to pay with their lives. Mo Yun naturally did not care about the lives of those people, but he cared about himself. At this time he had already used a secret technique to forcefully recover and raise his strength. But in the face of the collapsing void and the rampant turbulence, he still felt helpless. And all of this was Chu Luiyue's fault. If she had not summoned so many flames, if she had not forcefully controlled the Tianlei, if she had not, at this time, Mo Yun had forgotten that the Nan family and Black Sword Sect were the first to act. If they had not insisted on pursuing Chu Luiyue and the rest and paid a huge price for it, things would not have turned out this way. However, a person like him would never reflect on himself. Therefore he still blamed all his resentment on Chu Luiyue and the others. Rongxiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Oh? It seemed that the Black Demon Cave had not learned their lesson. His tone was light and there was even a slight smile on his lips. His entire person looked elegant, noble and elegant. However, when Mo Yun looked at that pair of eyes that were as deep as a pool, he suddenly quivered. He suddenly recalled a rumor from a few years ago. It was not accurate to say that it was a rumor because that incident had really happened. However, he had never personally experienced it and had only heard about it from others. It was said that a few years ago, Rongxiu had gone to the Black Demon Cave alone and directly attacked their lair. The Black Demon Cave suffered heavy losses in that battle. Not long after that incident, they even chose to live in seclusion. Although Mo Yun knew that the reason why the sect leader had made such a choice was not entirely because of Rongxiu, he had to admit that these matters had a significant impact on each other. Especially, at that time Rongxiu had indeed killed many people from the Black Demon Cave. Among them there was no lack of people of high status and power. Mo Yun happened to be out at that time and had just avoided this fierce battle. Therefore, many details about that battle were heard from his fellow sect members one after another. This matter was almost a taboo in the Black Demon Cave. Many people were still afraid when they mentioned the scene of that man killing his way into the Black Demon Cave alone. Mo Yun had not seen Rongxiu with his own eyes. Otherwise, he would not have known the identities of Rongxiu and Chu Luiyue only after the Nan family came to interrogate him. Because he had not personally experienced it, he had always maintained some doubts about these claims. Even after knowing Rongxiu's identity, his first thought was to kill him. Until now, he and Rongxiu faced each other face to face. When he met the man's cold and indifferent eyes, he suddenly remembered all the things he had heard before. Rongxiu, he really had great strength. Mo Yun's throat was a little tight. He was not stupid. On the contrary, in most cases he was very astute and intelligent. Otherwise, the higher-ups would not have sent him here to establish the Black Sword sect and be in charge of many things here. He intuitively felt a fatal danger. And this danger came from Rongxiu. Rongxiu gently raised his wrist, and a cluster of golden flames gushed out from his palm. Scorching, burning. At the same time, the incomparably wild energy in the surroundings began to obediently surge towards his flames. Including the energy that was rushing towards Mo Yun, it was forcibly snatched away halfway. Mo Yun's face was ashen, but his heart was uneasy. From this move alone, he could tell that Rongxiu's strength was not inferior to his, and was even stronger. Could not go head-to-head with Rongxiu. Mo Yun made a prompt decision, and with a sidestep he planned to go around Rongxiu and attack Chu Luiyue first. However, how would Rongxiu give him this chance? Swoosh. His slender and well-proportioned fingers waved gently. The incomparably bright golden flames transformed into a long whip, and went straight towards Mo Yun. Before Mo Yun could escape, he felt a golden light flash in front of his eyes. Then a burning pain came from his ankle. He looked down in panic and saw that one of his calves had been tightly bound by the flames. The blazing flames burned fiercely, and in the blink of an eye, his trousers had turned into ashes. The intense burning pain came quickly. Mo Yun's face turned pale. He was a god expert and ordinary flames could not get close to him. But Rongxiu's fire was also very powerful. Wrapping around his ankle was not the most important thing. What made Mo Yun's heart tremble the most was that after the flame wrapped around him, the force in his body seemed to have been suppressed and sealed by some kind of power. It could not be mobilized at all. Without being able to use force, no matter how powerful a cultivator was, he could not unleash his strength. Mo Yun was shocked and furious. Wasn't Rongxiu also a god like him? But why was the difference in strength between the two of them so great? In comparison, Rongxiu could practically crush him easily. Just as Mo Yun was thinking about this question, Rongxiu had already lashed out with his whip. Smack. Mo Yun's body flew out uncontrollably. He crashed heavily on a mountain peak. Bam. Rumble. Accompanied by these two sounds, that mountain peak actually collapsed directly after receiving this powerful impact. Countless huge rocks rolled down. Mo Yun's body was drowned in it very quickly. Rongxiu's eyes were cold. Don't delay my violators, this is the consequence. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1907. A cold and deep voice spread between heaven and earth, landing clearly in everyone's ears. The people of Black Sword sect were basically all dead. As for the people of Nan family, after hearing this, they felt that it was extremely ear-piercing. These words were clearly meant for them to hear. It was fine if Rongxiu did not make a move, but once he did, he used a killing move right away. He was killing the chicken to warn the monkey. Luo Yen was filled with rage as he looked at the flowing cloud flying diagram that was still burning in front of him. The flowing cloud flying diagram was a venerable divine weapon and would not be damaged easily. Therefore he was not worried that Chu Liuyue's flames would destroy it. However, he knew very well that with Chu Liuyue's interference, they would definitely not be able to use the flowing cloud flying diagram to leave this place. The space in all directions was crazily squeezing towards the center. If this continued, the entire Peach Blossom dock would completely collapse before long. I'm afraid we won't be able to get out. The expressions of the elders turned extremely ugly. Before they came, they had never expected things to develop to this stage. Putting aside Nan Yuxing's death, all of them would probably be buried here as well. Even Mo Yun is not a match for Rong Xiu than we. This was not to say that they were weaker than Mo Yun. It was just that when Mo Yun attacked earlier, the strength that he displayed was already extremely strong. Moreover, he went with great determination at that time, almost cutting off all means of retreat. Even so, he only managed to exchange one move with Rong Xiu. How good would the situation be for the rest of them? I think Rong Xiu's strength has clearly surpassed that of an ordinary venerable god. An elder gritted his teeth and said. But his aura is indeed that of a venerable god, another elder said hesitantly. Perhaps, he borrowed some external power? The elders had different opinions. However, they also knew that it was useless even if they knew this at this time. Luo Yen suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky. Inch by inch, the ground collapsed and large black holes spread out. It was like a giant beast opening its bloody mouth to devour everything. Countless surging dark clouds had already been devoured by now. Only a few strands of Tianlei were still wandering around. It was Tianlei who had been summoned by the blood sacrifice array. Before all of them landed, the blood sacrifice array had already collapsed. All that was left were the Tianlei, which wandered about in the sky uncontrollably. At this moment, as if affected by the spatial compression, the Tianlei began to converge towards the center. What was even more surprising was that they seemed to be merging with each other. The most important thing was that they were gathered in the air above Chu Liuyue's head. Looking at this scene, Luo Yen suddenly muttered. So what if you're a venerable god? Can he compete with the heavenly Tao? The elders were stunned when they heard this. Heavenly Tao. What did he mean by that? They looked at each other and subconsciously followed Luo Yan's line of sight. The wind howled and the energy was rampant. Everything looked the same. However, Tianlei in the sky was converging and merging. A dazzling light suddenly surged out from within. The elders all sucked in a breath of cold air. That was God-destroying tribulation? As the name suggested, the God-destroying tribulation was a heavenly tribulation used to destroy a venerable god. Legend had it that the God-destroying tribulation was dazzling and was born from the heavenly Tao. It was extremely powerful. Whenever it descended, it would be a calamity that could destroy the world. However, the God-destroying tribulation was extremely rare. In the world of divine ruins, there might not be a single person who could summon it in 1,000 years. Therefore, most people had only heard of it in rumors and did not have a deep understanding of it. In their opinion, this was indeed a phenomenon that only existed in ancient books. Therefore, when this God-destroying tribulation appeared, even Luo Yen looked at it for a long time before he dared to confirm it. This was the legendary God-destroying tribulation. Moreover, the person who was going to destroy it was Chu Liyue. It's really the God-destroying tribulation. The elders were all dumbfounded, their faces filled with shock. But that's not right. Isn't the God-destroying tribulation something that only venerable gods can summon? Shengguanyu is the venerable god. How could it be Rong Xiu who summoned it? No, it's Shengguanyu. Can't you see that the God-destroying tribulation is gathering above her head? Heavens! Is this really the God-destroying tribulation coming for her? How could a mere venerable god? Could it be because of the mountain fire? The Nan family was not the only one who was puzzled. At the same time, countless cultivators who were watching the situation in Peach Blossom Dock were also stunned. Some of them had sharp eyes and immediately recognized that it was the God-destroying tribulation. The news quickly spread among the crowd. Everyone was stunned on the spot. They did not expect that Chu Liyue would summon a God-destroying tribulation at such a critical moment. This was one disaster after another. It's over. It's completely over this time. Countless people were filled with despair and had already given up. Mo Yun struggled out of the pile of rocks. His body was already covered in wounds. He did not have time to be resentful. He looked up at the sky and saw the God-destroying tribulation that was gathering. His eyes widened and his body trembled. Once the deity-destroying tribulation descended, all of them would most likely die. He clenched his teeth, and a look of determination flashed in his eyes. Then a cloud of black mist suddenly spread out from his body. The totem between his eyebrows became brighter and weirder. A vast and mighty aura descended from the sky. Chu Luiyue looked up. The gorgeous Tianlei was still gathering power, and it would descend at any time to judge her. She clenched the black gambling token in her hand. What was this? How could it summon the god-destroying tribulation? Boom. Just as this thought flashed through her mind, the god-destroying tribulation had already descended. The biting cold aura instantly cut countless wounds on Chu Luiyue's body. However, at this moment, the sound of a zither rang out from within her body. Digression, 6 o'clock mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1908. Chu Luiyue felt that there were two forces fighting each other inside and outside her body. And her physical body was the battlefield. The sound of the zither rang out, and endless surging force rushed out, quickly pouring into her limbs and bones, nourishing her injuries. Those bloody wounds began to heal and scab at an astonishing speed. But as the pressure of the god-destroying tribulation continued to increase, some bloody wounds ruptured. One side was destroying and the other side was repairing. Chu Luiyue's body endured these two forces at the same time, and soon became a bloody person. She wore a red dress and dark red blood gushed out from her body, quickly disappearing on her clothes. If one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't be able to see anything. Only her increasingly pale face showed what kind of terrible torture she was suffering at this moment. Chu Luiyue's two hands had long lost feeling. At this moment, she was just relying on the last bit of willpower to barely hold on, holding the black shield in her hand tightly. The rust on it had almost completely peeled off. Countless faint blue crystals covered it. A faint glow almost enveloped the entire shield. The secret text engraved on it was faintly discernible. Sensing this movement, Rong Xiu looked up. When he saw the gorgeous and brilliant god-destroying tribulation appear, he narrowed his eyes slightly, and a look of deep thought flashed across his eyes. It actually, directly summoned the god-destroying tribulation. He put one hand behind his back and gently curled up, but his feet didn't move. From the looks of it, he was planning to wait and see. Big brother, that's the god-destroying tribulation? Sansan widened her small eyes in shock and asked in disbelief. Tani nodded. Although it was his first time seeing it, but, with this appearance and state, there was no doubt that it was the god-destroying tribulation. Hiss, seeing his affirmative nod, Sansan sucked in a breath of cold air. But isn't Master just a high god now? How can he summon the god-destroying tribulation? Wu Yao and the others also looked over nervously. Previously, their big brother had told them to wait patiently, and they had done so. But now, they really couldn't calm down. God-destroying tribulation. This was because the heavenly Tao had sensed a threat and wanted to annihilate him. Even if one used their toes to think, they would know how terrifying this was. No matter how powerful Master was, his own realm was still there. Rumor has it that only 10 to 20% of the god annihilation tribulations can safely pass through them. Master is a high deity. What should we do? Sun Yi's brows quickly furrowed, but he quickly relaxed. He paused for a moment before saying, the deity annihilation tribulation is indeed dangerous. However, those who can pass the deity annihilation tribulation will all become powerful figures in the world. This was an opportunity that thousands of cultivators could only dream of in their entire lives. Master was still a high deity, but he was able to summon the deity annihilation tribulation. This showed how strong his potential was. For Master to encounter such an opportunity, we should be happy for Master. The remaining people smiled bitterly. They naturally understood what Sun Yi was saying. But the key point was, what if Master couldn't get through it? One had to know that even the most powerful supreme gods might not be able to survive the god annihilation tribulation, let alone Master. It wasn't that they didn't believe in their Master's strength, it was just, this matter was too outrageous. Even the 13U sect, who had always thought highly of their Master, panicked at this moment. They really didn't dare to make this bet. Little Hachi suddenly stretched. Since Big Brother has said so, let's not worry for nothing. Besides, if Master really can't get through it, we can just go with him. What's there to be conflicted about? In any case, she was very open-minded. Her life was Master's. As long as Master was here, she would be here. If something happened to Master, she would follow without hesitation. These words didn't sound good. Could even be said that they were very depressing. However, the miraculous thing was that after hearing little Hachi's words, the remaining people were instantly less nervous. Made sense. The worst outcome was nothing more than this. It wasn't like they hadn't experienced it before. There was nothing to be afraid of if the same thing happened again. Besides, Master had many trump cards. Perhaps he could really win? Chu Luiyue didn't know what everyone was thinking. At this moment, all her attention was placed on the black shield in front of her and the God-destroying tribulation above it. Under the pincer attack from both sides, she felt as if her whole body was being torn apart. Terrifying energy rushed back and forth. The pressure of the God-destroying tribulation was getting heavier and heavier. The zither music in her body was also getting more and more desolate. Chu Luiyue's ears were filled with a roar. She could no longer hear any sound from the outside world. Faint luster kept flickering in front of her eyes. The weight on both of her hands kept increasing. She could only clench her teeth and stare. Crack. Finally. The last piece of rust on the black shield was peeled off. Then the last piece of faint blue crystal flew out from the city below. It gently covered it. At this moment the entire Peach Blossom Dock was in a mess. Countless faint blue flames were burning all over the Peach Blossom Dock. The entire city had almost turned into a sea of fire. Chu Luiyue stood in midair. She could even feel the burning aura in the air. When the last piece of thin crystal flew over and covered it perfectly, Chu Luiyue could clearly hear a chanting sound that seemed to come from an ancient time and space. Her mind was shocked. Then the secret text on the entire black shield finally appeared completely. At the same time, all the Tianlei in the sky had gathered. It condensed into an incomparably gorgeous God-destroying tribulation. When the luster on the black shield gradually dissipated, the God-destroying tribulation also crashed down. The target was Chu Luiyue. Digression. At about 6:30 p.m. mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1909. Reddish-gold flames instantly ignited around Chu Luiyue. However, the God-destroying tribulation was extremely fast. In just an instant, Chu Luiyue's figure was devoured. Boom. Endless resplendent streams of light shot out in all directions. Even the silver-red God realm that Chu Luiyue displayed at the start was affected as well, and it was instantly scattered into pieces. Below, the mountain range that was already in a mess started to collapse again at a visible speed. In the blink of an eye, it was razed to the ground. Xin Yi quickly set up a green barrier in front of him and shouted at the same time, "Retreat!" Hearing his order, the 13 Yu guards instinctively retreated. Even so, they still suffered a great impact. The colorful streams of light flew over and collided with the barrier that Xin Yi had set up. They silently devoured each other and killed each other crazily. Xin Yi was the first to bear the brunt. His chest shook and blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. Big Brother? Sanson and the others were shocked. In their impression, Big Brother was almost invincible. He had never been in such a sorry state. However, this was merely the aftermath of the God-destroying tribulation. Their master, who was facing the full-force attack of the God-destroying tribulation, was in even more danger. Xin Yi forcefully swallowed the taste of blood that surged up his mouth. Without stopping, he continued to lead everyone in retreat. Danger. Almost at the same time, Luo Yan and the others on the other side also sensed that something was wrong. Luo Yan shouted and immediately retreated. However, an elder chose to go forward. Flowing cloud flying diagram. This was the treasure of the Nan family. If it was lost, however, just as his hand touched the burning flowing cloud flying diagram, a colorful stream of light suddenly flew behind him. Luo Yan and the others' expressions changed. Dodge. That elder also felt a gust of cold wind coming from behind him. He knew that something was wrong and immediately grabbed the flowing cloud flying diagram and fled. However, it was still too late. That stream of light was simply too fast. He had just taken a step when the colorful stream of light behind him directly pierced through his chest. Blood splattered everywhere. The warm and sweet blood even splashed onto the faces and bodies of Luo Yan and the others. Their hearts were filled with shock and they were all stunned. The elder threw out the flowing cloud flying diagram with great difficulty, then spat out 2 words with great difficulty. Hurry. Go. Luo Yan subconsciously borrowed the flowing cloud flying diagram. The scarlet gold flames and the transparent flames intertwined and enveloped him. It was boiling hot to the touch. Fortunately, the flowing cloud flying diagram was also one of the 10 great saint artifacts. Although the flames could destroy the spatial tunnel it created, it would not cause fatal damage to the diagram itself. Furthermore, Luo Yan himself was a god. With a thought, a layer of silver armor quickly covered his arm. He clenched the flowing cloud-flying diagram tightly in his hand and retreated at full speed at the same time. The other elders didn't have time to say anything and could only follow closely behind. By the time they managed to dodge the attack of the colorful light, they had already flown quite a distance away. After making sure that he had avoided the fatal threat, Luo Yan stopped and looked back again. He saw the body of the elder from the Nan clan explode. A terrifying energy wave came crashing down, instantly crushing him into dust. His body and soul were destroyed. He didn't even have time to cry out in pain. Luo Yan's heart was beating violently, the blood in his body seemed to be boiling, and his temples were throbbing. The scene in front of him had a huge impact on him. If they were a step too late just now, then the consequences were simply unimaginable. Luo Yan had been a god for many years. It had been too long since he felt such a fatal threat of death. The three elders standing beside him were all stunned at this time. A god powerhouse was gone just like that? The power of the god-destroying tribulation was so terrifying. Even a scattered aftershock had such a terrifying power, then. Chu Luiyue, who was at the center and endured the most pressure of the god-destroying tribulation, would die without a doubt. Mo Yun was originally hiding in a pile of rocks, planning to wait for an opportunity to move. However, the arrival of the god-destroying tribulation completely shattered all his plans. The rocks shook, the earth shook, and the mountains shook. The thick fog on his body had already covered more than half of his body. However, the power of this god-destroying tribulation was too strong. It was already difficult for him to avoid these aftershock attacks, let alone other things. If this continued, he was afraid that he would really die here silently. Mo Yun was unwilling in his heart. The totem between his brows suddenly became even brighter. The thick color of blood filled his eyes. A smell of a corpse suddenly emitted from his body. His eyes also gradually became ice-cold and bloodthirsty. However, right at this time, a golden flame suddenly flew over. Mo Yun suddenly realized something and raised his head to look. That ball of golden flame already flew in front of him. Just as he was planning to dodge, that flame actually directly exploded in front of him. Boom. For a moment, sparks scattered. In a blink of an eye, it completely wrapped Mo Yun. Just as he was about to struggle and escape, a thick blackness suddenly gushed out from that golden flame. The cold and ruthless aura immediately made Mo Yun open his eyes wide in shock. This was swish. Without waiting for him to open his mouth, that blackness already swallowed him. Mo Yun was dead. The golden flame followed closely and spread up. From the outside, no one detected any abnormality. Very soon, the flame dissipated and a wind blew over. It raised a handful of flying ashes. No one would have known that the once glorious Mo Yun, the deputy sect leader of Mo Sword Sect, actually died silently in such a way. In fact, at this moment, no one cared about him anymore. Everyone's attention was on Chu Luiyue. Countless pairs of eyes were looking at that bright and gorgeous ball of flame in midair. Who could withstand the descent of the god-destroying tribulation? The space was still constantly collapsing. The world was dark. They were very clear that when this ball of flame dissipated, everything would be over. And Chu Luiyue, what a pity. All of us are going to be buried with her. In the Peach Blossom Cove, someone sighed dejectedly. In the crowd, Duan Qingxuan frowned and was about to explain when he suddenly saw something and suddenly opened his eyes wide. What is that? When everyone heard that, they all subconsciously looked over. They saw that in that dazzling ball of flame, something suddenly flew out. Someone murmured with uncertainty, "It seems to be a stone?" Digression, accumulating power. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 1910. It was indeed a piece of rock. It was about the size of a fist and was grayish-white in color. It rolled out of the brilliant flame as if someone had accidentally thrown it out. Many people were stunned. The reason for that was because the appearance of this stone in such a situation was truly untimely. Why would such a thing appear out of nowhere? But soon the second stone also rolled out shakily from within. At this moment, the raging power of the god-destroying tribulation had completely messed up the surrounding space. Countless crazy spatial turbulences intertwined as if they were going to tear everything apart. However, the two stones didn't seem to be affected by the fluctuation at all. They just rolled away. At first glance, it was no different from being on flat ground. Before the crowd could react, the third rock appeared and went in another direction. At this moment, time seemed to flow extremely slowly. Countless pairs of eyes were fixed on the strange scene in the sky. With the ball of flame as the center, more and more rocks rolled out and scattered in all directions. Under the brilliant light, these rocks looked ordinary. Because of this, their appearance was extremely strange. These rocks rushed out of the God-destroying tribulation's power. Why aren't they broken? Someone muttered in a low voice. Many people were stunned when they heard this. That's right. When the God-destroying tribulation descended, even the mountain peaks below collapsed one after another and were completely destroyed. Why were these small rocks not affected at all? No, aren't you curious about where these stones came from? Of course, they could not have come from the God-destroying tribulation. Then the only explanation was, Chu Luiyue. These rocks must be hers. But this was even more puzzling. She was trapped in the God-destroying tribulation and no one knew if she was dead or alive. How could she have the time to throw these rocks out? No. There seems to be something coming out of those rocks. His exclamation was like a stone thrown into a calm lake, causing ripples to form on the surface of the water. Everyone looked over. Soon the crowd was noisy again. It seems to be true. What's that blue thing? Hey, the one beside it is green. Why do these rocks seem to be different? With the passage of time, the originally gray, unremarkable, and even somewhat ugly stones began to glow with all sorts of colors. Although they could not be compared to the brilliant light of the God-destroying tribulation, they were still quite dazzling when scattered. The void collapsed and there were black holes everywhere. The appearance of these streams of light were like stars that lit up the darkness. Suddenly, someone exclaimed in shock. Those don't seem to be ordinary rocks. Those streams of light are God domains. As soon as he said this, everyone was shocked. They were actually very familiar with the words God domains. After all, those who could survive in the Peach Blossom Cove were mostly divine-level experts. When they fought with each other, they had more or less seen the God domains of other cultivators. But at this time, for them to connect these stones with the divine realm was still far beyond their imagination. God domain? How is that? Only deity-rank powerhouses could condense a deity domain. No matter how powerful these stones were, they were also dead objects. How could he display his divine domain? Could it be that you were too scared and made a mistake? There were different opinions. However, everyone obviously did not believe this. It was not that they had any opinions about the person who said this, but the matter itself was very ridiculous in their eyes. Therefore they instinctively chose to refute. No. Look carefully. That really looks like a God domain. Why would I lie to you at this time? Seeing that everyone did not believe him, the person was a little anxious. He raised his finger and pointed at the rocks that were scattered in the sky. Look for yourselves. If those streams of light are not God domains, what are they? Under his repeated pleading, some people raised their heads to look at him in disbelief. At this time, those rocks were basically surrounded by various streams of light. Looking from below, balls of light were flickering. The light was not dazzling, but it seemed to be wrapped in a vast aura. Some people's expressions changed. This aura, it was indeed a God domain. It really seems to be. Those who had objected solemnly just now were stunned and stammered. The noisy crowd quickly quieted down. This was because the impact of this matter was too great for them. After a while, someone muttered in a low voice, "How is this possible? Am I too inexperienced? Is there really a God domain in this world without cultivators? No, it's not your problem. I'm afraid that in the entire divine ruins, there has never been such a situation. It seems that Peach Blossom Dock is really finished. A high God expert summoned a God-destroying tribulation, and the broken rocks have God domains. This is crazy. This is crazy." Too many unbelievable things had happened, so much so that people began to doubt whether everything in front of them was real or just an illusion. However, while most people were shocked and lost, there were still a few people who maintained their last bit of rationality. A somewhat childish voice suddenly came from the crowd. "Daddy, these rocks are scattered like this, like. The person who spoke was a little girl who was about 7 or 8 years old. She looked up with a sincere expression, but there was a trace of doubt in her eyes. She felt that this scene was somewhat familiar, but she could not recall it. When Duan Qingxuan, who was standing not far away, heard this, a white light suddenly flashed in his mind. Xian formation. After his reminder, the little girl finally revealed a look of realization. Yes. It is like a Xian formation. Daddy, look, it is very similar to the Xian formations you showed me before. At the age of 7 or 8, she had already started cultivating, but she still maintained the most honest view of everything. When she saw the scattered rocks in the sky, she felt that they were very familiar. However, the middle-aged man who was being pulled by her did not have the heart to care about this. He just treated it as his child's babbling. Those rocks had already displayed god domains, which was strange enough, and now she was saying that they had constructed a Shen formation. It was obvious that it was impossible. He did not say anything, but he held his daughter in his arms with heartache. His poor child was still so young, and this time, however, Duan Qingxuan stared at the sky and said word by word, "It is not like a Shen formation. It is a Shen formation." Every word was sonorous and forceful. Many people, including the middle-aged man, subconsciously raised their heads to look at the sky. In the sky, countless rocks were scattered around the ball of light of the God-destroying tribulation. At first glance it was a mess. However, if one observed carefully, they would find that there was indeed some kind of pattern in the arrangement of these rocks. The horizontal and vertical lines intertwined with each other, but they were perfectly integrated. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1911. There were god domains wrapped around those stones. At this moment, as if they were being summoned by some kind of power, these god domains surged out from the dusty stones and connected with each other. The dots connected to form a line. The lines connected to form a surface. Above the black sky, these seemingly messy and scattered divine domains began to silently condense. Individually, none of the god domains unleashed by these stones could be considered powerful. In fact, after 10,000 years, these powerful god domains, which once belonged to countless powerful cultivators, were only left with the last remnants of power. These powers might be insignificant. These god domains might not be a concern. However, when they gathered together, the layers of power accumulated and accumulated into a shockingly vast pressure. The sky collapsed, and the entire peach blossom dock fell into a long night. However, there were still stars twinkling in the night sky, emitting a lustrous glow. The god domains of countless stones connected with each other, forming a brilliant and flexible net. The most dazzling thing was the center of the net, which was a ball of brilliant and gorgeous light. It was as if a breeze was blowing, gently lifting up this huge net. In an instant, the sound of surging tides could be heard. Whoosh, abundant heaven and earth energy surged along with it. Even the huge ball of light seemed to be affected. It swayed back and forth in the huge net that rose and fell. Everyone in Peach Blossom Dock looked at this scene in a daze. That was, someone shook the god-destroying tribulation? However, at this moment, who else could do this other than Chu Luiyue, who was in the middle of it? This absurd and crazy thought surged in the minds of countless people, but they forcefully suppressed it. Impossible. The terrifying energy of the god-destroying tribulation was something that even the Nan family's venerable god expert could not resist. Let alone Chu Luiyue, who was merely a god expert. Countless people held their breaths. The entire Peach Blossom Dock seemed to have quieted down. At this moment, every pair of eyes was looking at that brilliant ball of light. It swayed gently, and the power on it seemed to be constantly being reduced. The surrounding god domains were madly devouring its power. Streams of light of various colors flew and surged rapidly in the night sky, as if they were weaving a beautiful piece of silk. She's crazy? How dare she snatch the power of the god-destroying tribulation? Luo Yin finally could not help but exclaim in shock. He, who had always kept a poker face, couldn't control himself at this moment. His face was full of shock. Previously, when they had obtained the flowing cloud flying diagram, they had already retreated far away. However, from where he stood, he could still clearly see the situation on Chu Luiyue's side. On top of that, they were all gods, so they were extremely sensitive to energy fluctuations and changes. Therefore, after watching for a while, they were shocked to find that the power of the god-slaying tribulation was being dispersed. Chu Luiyue was really crazy. He actually dared to do this. This was simply snatching food from a tiger's mouth. The elders were also in disbelief. God-destroying tribulation. The others didn't even have time to dodge, but she actually had the guts. Could it be that she wanted to fight against the heavenly Tao with her mortal body? How powerful is the deity annihilation tribulation? How could it allow her to be so impudent? Luo Yin sucked in a breath of cold air. He only felt that today he had already seen all kinds of scenes that he had never seen in the past half of his life. Not long after he finished speaking, the deity annihilation tribulation suddenly shone brightly. His heart skipped a beat and he retreated again. Run. The remaining three elders also sensed that something was amiss and followed closely behind. Boom. An earth-shattering explosion suddenly came from the sky. An extremely dazzling firework bloomed in the black night sky. The deity Annihilation Tribulation had completely exploded. The boundless energy accumulated within it surged out in all directions like a tide. It covered the sky and covered the earth, vast and mighty. That beautiful light was like a torrential flood that poured down in torrents, destroying everything in its path. It devoured everything. The vast and deep sky was instantly enveloped by this brilliant color. Sun Yi strengthened the barrier in front of him again. However, the power of the deity Annihilation Tribulation was too strong. It almost didn't stop at all and destroyed his barrier. In a moment of desperation, Sanson also hurriedly attacked. A blue flame instantly formed into a ball, encircling the figures of the few people within it. The energy rushed over, and the round ball quickly dodged to the side, narrowly avoiding it. The edge of the round ball brushed past a ray of colorful flowing light, giving off a piercing chi-la sound. Sanson suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. The others hurriedly went forward and injected their power into Sanson's body. Only then did Sanson's expression become slightly better. But at this time he couldn't care about that. He only took a deep breath and hurriedly raised his head to look in the direction of Chu Liwei. Master, it was a pity that the area was covered by thousands of rays of light and they couldn't see anything at all. As for the people in Peach Blossom Dock City, they had also sunk into a deep panic. They watched as the flowing light rushed to the top of Peach Blossom Dock City walls like water. This brilliant light was so bright, as if it had gathered the world's most moving and rich colors, causing one's heart to waver. However, at this moment, no one was in the mood to admire this magnificent and shocking scene. Because they were very clear that once this flowing light fell like a waterfall, the entire Peach Blossom Dock City would be destroyed. And they, too, would cease to exist. The atmosphere was cold and stagnant. Father, are we going to die? The little girl, who was quite excited about her discovery, finally realized that something was wrong and asked timidly. Her father hugged her tightly. Darling, don't be afraid. Father is here. Duan Qingxuan's heart seemed to be tightly gripped by something and he couldn't breathe. Hurried footsteps suddenly came from behind him. He turned back to look. The person who came was Yan Qing. Yan, Duan Qingxuan was about to speak when he saw Yan Qing shake his head slightly. And his gaze was fixed on the sky. Duan Qingxuan seemed to have sensed something and turned his head to look again. A tall and slender white figure had appeared in front of the stream of light without anyone noticing. Rong Xiu crossed his hands in front of him and two balls of flames were burning in the depths of his deep phoenix eyes. One was bright gold. The other was dark. A huge golden bounded domain suddenly appeared. It seemed that it had blocked all the flowing light. The torrent didn't stop and rushed forward. Just as the two forces were about to collide, a clear voice suddenly came. Stop. Along with this voice, the endless colorful flowing light that was surging forward actually stopped in front of the golden bounded domain. Everyone was stunned and subconsciously looked towards the direction of the voice. They saw an exquisite figure standing in the air. She held a shield in front of her with both hands. Everyone couldn't see her face and could only see a head of black hair fluttering in the wind. On the shield there was a glimmer of light. Clang. She suddenly smashed the shield down heavily. Beneath her feet, the 3,000 divine domains suddenly moved. It was as if a mighty pressure from ancient times was surging in all directions. Digression? It took a lot of energy and effort to write this part, but I finally finished it. Updated at 6:00 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1912. The gorgeous flowing light that almost covered the entire sky finally began to collapse inch by inch after a short pause. The god-destroying tribulation shattered into countless pieces of starlight and fell into the 3,000 god domains that filled the sky. It was like a river of stars splashing down, and countless brilliant lights flew up. The strong wind blew and the woman's red dress fluttered. All kinds of beautiful and brilliant lights flickered around her, but they were not as bright as her. The scene seemed to be frozen, but she was 1,000 times more intense than the faint ink. All of a sudden, it seemed to give people an illusion. The sky fell and the earth cracked and she was the only god. Countless people looked up with dazed expressions, and this scene was forever engraved in their hearts. No matter how much time had passed, there would always be people who would remember that there was once a woman who single-handedly turned the tide in such a dangerous situation. She was the one who made the flowing light flow backward. She was the one who made the rushing flow backward. She was the one who truly relied on her mortal body to withstand the god-destroying tribulation. The thick smell of blood spread between her lips and teeth. Her heart was beating violently, as if it would jump out of her chest at any time. Her head was throbbing with pain and her last string was pulled tight. A numb and dull pain came from her arms. Sticky dark red blood seeped out from her hands. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and forced herself to swallow this breath. Clang. There seemed to be an invisible hand that was plucking the delicate strings in her body. The sound of the zither was bleak and solemn, but it quickly woke her up. She raised her eyes and looked around. What entered her eyes was a sea of brilliant light. The God-destroying tribulation had collapsed, forming countless brilliant flowing lights that were rushing back and forth in the sky above her. And beneath her feet were the 3,000 God domains that were formed by the stones. Chu Luiyue was moved and she sighed softly. The God domains of the gods really can't be underestimated. In the beginning she really had no other way. She finally chose to try this method out of helplessness. She did not dare to have any hope in her heart. After all, when she brought these stones back from the God-destroying mound, they did not seem to be particularly powerful. Although each stone contained a God domain, they were not considered powerful. At that time, Chu Luiyue also felt that they were too clingy. He couldn't persuade them otherwise, so he chose to take them away. Although these stones were occasionally mischievous, most of the time they were very gentle and obedient. Chu Luiyue had never thought that the first time he used them to construct a profound formation, it would erupt with such a powerful and unparalleled power. What surprised her the most was that after these divine domains fused with each other, the surging battle intent increased exponentially. She could even feel an unprecedented and indestructible determination from it. It was a madness and persistence that she had never felt before. It was an astonishing will that had been passed down from the battlefield 10,000 years ago. For a moment, Chu Luiyue even thought that it was a God-destroying tribulation. Even if it was the sky, they could completely overturn it. At this moment, a colorful stream of light suddenly flew over. The 13th Yu guard, who had just calmed down, felt her heart tighten again when she saw this. Master, be careful. Chu Luiyue shook her head lightly, indicating that they didn't need to worry. She didn't feel any threat from that stream of light. On the contrary, she even felt a faint sense of inspiration. This feeling was very subtle and indescribable. However, she knew that it wouldn't hurt her. Soon, that stream of light flew in front of her. As if subconsciously, Chu Luiyue stretched out a hand. Her hand had suffered a great amount of pressure when she used the shield to block the God-destroying tribulation. At this moment, it was already badly mutilated. Rong Xiu's phoenix eyes darkened slightly. A trace of coldness flashed across his eyes, but it disappeared in an instant. Immediately after, that stream of light flew into Chu Luiyue's hand. The moment it touched her body, that stream of light quickly condensed into a translucent and gorgeous soft armor that gently covered the back of her hand. That thing was only half the size of a palm. Its shape was irregular, but it was extremely exquisite and luxurious. A faint pressure was emitted from it. Chu Luiyue was slightly shocked. Soon the second stream of light flew in and stuck tightly to the first piece of the gorgeous soft armor. At the same time, the wound that was covered by the soft armor began to heal at an astonishing speed. In the blink of an eye, that shocking wound quickly healed and formed a scab. Soon that layer of shallow scar peeled off bit by bit. The wound healed as if it was never there. It didn't look like she had been injured at all. This time even Chu Luiyue was shocked. She was a celestial physician. She knew all too well how difficult it was to heal such an injury to its original state. Moreover, it was done in such a short time. More and more streams of light were flying toward her. Just as Chu Luiyue was filled with doubts, a wave suddenly came from her dantian. Chu Luiyue looked over and was shocked to find that a small illusory figure had appeared in her body without her noticing. It was right under the zither score that had transformed into water droplets. The figure was transparent, but its shape and appearance were exactly the same as Chu Luiyue's. At this moment, the right hand of the transparent figure was shining with a gorgeous light. It was exactly the same as the soft armor that covered Chu Luiyue's body. Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment, and a bold idea suddenly came to her mind. This was a divine body? As soon as this idea came to her mind, it immediately set off huge waves in Chu Luiyue's heart. A few years ago, when she came to the Divine Ruins world, although she was in the limelight at Lingxiao College, she hadn't cultivated a divine body at that time. After breaking through to the high god level, she smoothly condensed a godly domain. However, a divine body was different from a godly domain. One had to know that not every high god could cultivate a divine body. There were all kinds of divine bodies in the world. In Lingxiao College, Chu Liwei had read countless books on cultivating a divine body. She had tried to do it more than once. However, she didn't know why she couldn't succeed. She was extremely talented on the path of cultivation. She had never encountered any obstacles along the way. It wasn't until she started to cultivate her divine body that she encountered failure after failure. She was Nan Su Huai's only disciple, and all the methods of cultivating a divine body that she had seen and learned were absolutely outstanding. However, no matter which method she tried, she couldn't succeed. In the end, even Nan Su Huai couldn't stand it anymore. At that time, he said that since this was the case, it meant that she had a divine body that should belong to her. Only when the opportunity came could she cultivate it. As for the other divine bodies, she wasn't fated to be with them, so there was no need to continue trying. Chu Liwei had always been skeptical about these words. She only thought that her master was comforting her, so she agreed. Since then, she didn't try to cultivate a divine body by force. She never expected that she would have a divine body today. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1913. A thought suddenly flashed across Chu Liue's mind. This divine body was formed from the power of the God-destroying tribulation. Even she could not help but gasp when she thought of this. Her heart was beating violently. A divine body formed by the God-destroying tribulation. It was easy to imagine how powerful it was. Chu Liwei had imagined countless times what kind of divine body she would cultivate. When this day came, she was shocked and could not recover for a long time. She lowered her eyes slightly. At this moment, more and more beautiful soft armor covered her body. The divine body in her dantian was also condensing. It gradually turned from transparent to gorgeous. Some of the flowing light in the sky flew into the 3,000 god regions. Most of them turned into soft armor and embedded themselves around Chu Liwei. She closed her eyes gently and began to cultivate while holding her breath. The power around her flowed into her body continuously. Her aura was also rising continuously. Everyone was stunned by what they saw. There was dead silence in Peach Blossom Dock City. Everything in front of them changed too quickly. They did not even have time to react. They were facing a life and death crisis a moment ago. In the blink of an eye, the crisis was over? The impact of this was simply too great. The little girl, who was held tightly in her father's arms, was confused. She stretched out her hand and pointed to the sky. She said softly, "Daddy, it's dawn." Hearing this, the middle-aged man was stunned. He looked up instinctively. What he saw stunned him on the spot. Sure enough, a ray of light shone through the originally dark and gloomy sky. Although it was faint, it was there. Moreover, that ray of light seemed to be spreading to the surroundings. After a while, he finally realized something. His eyes widened. The barrier of Peach Blossom Dock is recovering? There was a clap of thunder. Everyone was filled with shock when they heard this. Many pairs of eyes looked at the sky. It seems that the barrier is recovering? Don't you feel that the wild space turbulence seems to be restrained? The mountain fire is also gradually extinguishing. They were in the middle of it. They could feel the changes in the energy most clearly. The space that had been crazily squeezing and contracting seemed to have suddenly stopped, and was gradually returning to its original state. That suffocating pressure also seemed to quietly dissipate. Duan Qingxuan could not help but mutter in a low voice, "Peach Blossom Dock is alive?" Yan Qing let out a long sigh. Her Highness, truly amazing. Actually, it wasn't that he wasn't worried before. However, Master insisted on not making a move. At most, he only set up a barrier. But before they could be used, the princess consort had already taken care of them. Gradually, some people in the crowd regained their senses. Is this all thanks to Shangguanyu? As soon as his voice fell, the bustling street immediately fell into a dead silence. Everyone had complicated expressions on their faces. In actual fact, they more or less had some complaints about Chu Liwei previously. If she had not offended the Black Sword sect and the Nan family, perhaps this crisis would not have occurred. However, after experiencing all this, they knew very well that the survival of so many people in Peach Blossom Dock was indeed because of Chu Liwei. She was the one who withstood the God-destroying tribulation. She was also the one who saved the people in the city in time. Even Peach Blossom Dock, which was about to collapse, was starting to recover bit by bit. Who could say that this was not due to her efforts? In fact, they also knew very well that she was the most innocent one in all of this. The ones who really started this conflict were the Black Sword sect and the Nan family. And now, everyone was relying on her to survive. How could they have the nerve to blame her for all this? Hey. I don't care about others, but my life was indeed saved by Shangguan Yu. I owe her a debt of gratitude and I will repay her kindness. In the crowd, a dark-skinned burly man suddenly spoke with a voice full of energy. He cupped his fists and saluted in the direction of Chu Luiyue. In the future, if anyone dares to make things difficult for her, don't blame me for not showing mercy. After a short moment of silence, all sorts of voices were heard. Me too. She saved my life and I will remember it in my heart. I heard that the third boss of the Yu residence is one of her people? I have long wanted to go to the Yu residence to take a look. When this matter is over, I will go there and see if I can find any work. Ah, you little brat, you're really dreaming. Even if you are willing to go, they might not be willing to accept you. The Yu residence's vetting is very strict. I think I am quite suitable. TSK. You guys are way too selfish. I am different from you. I will not join the Yu residence, but if that person in the Yu residence need anything in the future, I will go through water and tread on fire. Many people expressed their opinions and the atmosphere quickly became lively. Duan Qingxuan looked at Yan Qing with a strange expression. The two of them quickly exchanged glances. Yan Qing raised an eyebrow. This was indeed not arranged by them. It seemed that there were really people who wanted to seek refuge with the Yu residence, but thinking about it carefully, it was normal. Ink Sword sect had been destroyed, and the Yu residence was one of the best in the entire Peach Blossom Cove. Even if there were some who could compete with them after this incident, they could not be compared to them. After all, everyone now knew that the real master of the Yu residence was Chu Luiyue. In today's battle, Chu Luiyue had saved the entire Peach Blossom Cove. Everyone here owed her their lives. Who else could have such an advantage? Besides that, Chu Luiyue's peerless strength was enough to make countless people admire and follow her. She was a high god, summoned the god-destroying tribulation and won. With such talent and battle strength, how many people in the world could be on par with her? In the Peach Blossom Cove, the strong were respected. And Chu Luiyue, after this battle, had undoubtedly become a peerless expert in the hearts of countless people. Chu Luiyue held her breath and concentrated. The power of the god-destroying tribulation was gradually being devoured by her. Countless soft armor covered her entire body, and even her neck and face were covered by the translucent soft armor. The last ray of light finally landed in between her eyebrows. The moment it covered her, her eyebrows suddenly burned with a scorching heat. A totem suddenly flashed into existence. Digression, maybe it was because I fell sick a while ago and my body was overdrawn. I have rested a lot in the past few days and I will try to recover tomorrow. Thank you for your understanding. Mon mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1914. Chu Luiyue let out a clear cry. She had achieved the phenomenal success of her divine body. A beautiful soft armor covered her body. It was dazzling. Light poured down from the sky and shone on her body, reflecting fragments of sparkling light. She opened her eyes abruptly. A vast and majestic aura erupted from her body. Everyone was in awe. Even though Chu Luiyue was only a high deity, her divine body's suppression was comparable to her eminence's. Chu Luiyue exhaled deeply as she felt the vigorous power surging in her body. Phew, so this was what it felt like to have a divine body. She looked down. The Peach Blossom Dock was in a mess. The inside of the city was still fine, but the continuous mountain range outside the city was almost completely destroyed. There were ravines everywhere and there were traces of fire everywhere. The strong smell of blood filled the air. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. She was undoubtedly partly responsible for the Peach Blossom Dock's current state. She raised her hand and put away the shield in her hand. Then she took a step forward. The divine domain under her feet rippled lightly and then quietly dissipated. The stones withdrew their divine domains and returned to their normal grayish-white appearance. Chu Luiyue waved her hand, and the stones flew back to her. The stones in front of her jumped a few times in front of her, as if they were eager to be praised. The stones in the row behind them also jumped up and fought to be first. If it weren't for the fact that Chu Luiyue had repeatedly taught them to be obedient and that nobody was allowed to cut the queue, it would have been a mess by now. Looking at the pile of stones jumping around, Chu Luiyue's lips couldn't help but curl up, and a smile appeared in her eyes. Good job. Hearing the praise, the stones were very happy and jumped back into her interspatial ring. Everyone was dumbfounded. Could this be? Chu Luiyue did not care about them. After all, they had seen what they should and should not see. In that case, there was nothing to hide. Also, she could take this opportunity to let the people in the Peach Blossom Dock owe her a favor. Actually, she didn't think too much about it at first. But now that things had come to this, it was not without benefits. Most of the energy of the god-destroying tribulation had been swallowed by Chu Luiyue to refine his god body. As for the remaining portion, it had fused into the rocks. Chu Luiyue could clearly feel that the divine domain above was much stronger than before. This was a pleasant surprise. Finally, Chu Luiyue flipped his wrist and took out an item. The people below watched from afar, unable to see clearly. What's that in her hand? I don't know. It's too small. It looks like a sprout. Just as everyone was puzzled, they saw Chu Luiyue gently wave his hand. A verdant leaf swayed in the wind. Then the abundant energy between heaven and earth began to surge. Hula, the energy was like a tide surging violently. A ray of sunlight shone down. In the distance, the enchantment of the Peach Blossom Dock began to reform. Is that Tutian baby? Someone murmured in disbelief. Everyone was shocked. That was a rare treasure. Chu Luiyue even had this? Just how many trump cards did she have on her? Chu Luiyue's motive for summoning the Tutian baby was simple. After all the previous torment, the void of the Peach Blossom Dock had collapsed beyond recognition. The energy was rampaging, and the entire space was almost completely destroyed. Even though she had successfully passed the god-destroying tribulation, everything here still needed to be sorted out and organized. The Tutian baby could easily control the vigorous energy of heaven and earth. Naturally, it was the perfect choice. The result was as expected. With just a thought, the Tutian baby began to deal with the chaotic energy. The enchantment of the Peach Blossom Dock quickly reformed. Compared to before, there was a subtle difference. A faint, beautiful light appeared on the enchantment. From afar, it looked like countless colorful light spots were sprinkled on it, emitting a lustrous glow. That was the residual energy of the god-destroying tribulation. However, apart from looking different, the biggest difference between this newly formed enchantment and the previous one was that it was several times stronger than before. In fact, the entire Peach Blossom Dock had undergone the baptism of the god-destroying tribulation and had been reborn. All the unstable void after it had completely collapsed relied on the energy of the god-destroying tribulation to rebuild and become incomparably stable. Abundant energy of heaven and earth surged back and forth. Feeling this huge and subtle change, Chu Luiyue sighed deeply in her heart. Destruction followed by reconstruction. This was the Peach Blossom Dock of today. Congratulations you, Rong Xiao moved and came to Chu Luiyue's side. His handsome and charming face was filled with a warm smile. Between his eyebrows, there was undisguised affection and pride. This was his From the beginning to the end, he had insisted on not interfering. Although his heart ached, he knew that she could do it. As expected, this huge Peach Blossom Dock had completely become her domain from now on. In this world, there was no one else who could be compared to her. She was the brightest pearl. No matter where she was, she could blossom in a myriad of ways. Chu Luiyue raised her eyes and looked into his deep eyes. She also raised the corners of her lips. With just one look, they could understand each other's feelings. She knew that Rong Xiao was proud of her and happy for her. You already thought of this? Chu Luiyue asked with interest. Rong Xiao's smile deepened. The god-destroying tribulation. I really didn't expect it. He didn't expect it to come so quickly. In the beginning, he didn't interfere because he knew that she was dissatisfied with the Black Sword sect and the Nan family. He wanted to let her fight to her heart's content and vent her dissatisfaction. But later, it was indeed unexpected. Of course, she was always able to surprise him. The sky gradually brightened. The flames in various places had already been extinguished. Abundant energy of heaven and earth surged out. The Tutian baby had an extremely vigorous vitality. In this kind of situation, it could play a huge role. Chu Luiyue glanced out of the corner of her eyes. Suddenly, she saw that there seemed to be something reflecting the clear light below. She focused her eyes and saw that a lake had appeared in the midst of the messy mountain range. Under the sunlight, the surface of the lake rippled. There were piles of rocks by the lake. A stream flowed down, spreading out into a clear and shallow stream. Fresh green shoots sprouted from the side of the lake. Chu Luiyue widened her eyes slightly. This lake, looks like I've seen it before. Suddenly, a white light flashed in her mind. Isn't this the small space that Sanson had previously? The barrier above was still there. From the outside it still looked like a lake. However, a stream diverged from it and extended all over the mountains and plains. Everywhere it passed, it was a scene full of vitality. A faint fragrance of herbs pervaded the air. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1915. My baby. Sanson's heart ached when she saw this. Little Hachi rolled her eyes. What are you yelling for? Isn't it just a portion of the energy from that small space? This is a good thing for the entire Peach Blossom Dock and our master. Don't delay it. Sanson's cheeks twitched as she felt wronged. Although little Hachi was younger in terms of seniority, no one in the 13U sect dared to argue with her except for her big brother. Even as the third brother, he felt the same way. I know. I'm just feeling sorry for you. With the nourishment from that small space, the Peach Blossom Dock, which was almost completely destroyed, would recover at a much faster speed. Along the banks of the stream, if nothing went wrong, there should be many heavenly treasures growing in the future. This was a huge fortune. As long as the Peach Blossom Dock could recover quickly, it would be great for their master. After today, the entire Peach Blossom Dock will belong to our master, 13 muttered softly. There was still a look of shock on his face, which still had a hint of youthfulness, and it hadn't faded away. He had always known that his master was powerful. But over the years he had spent most of his time with his big brother and the rest. When he was by his master's side, it was actually pitiful. Plus, he was young and had never seen Chu Liue fight with his own eyes. And this time, it had undoubtedly brought him a huge shock. Sun Yi's eyes relaxed and a trace of a smile appeared in his usually indifferent eyes. This was the master's intention for coming here this time. But he didn't expect that after all these twists and turns, it would be completed smoothly in advance. And the entire Peach Blossom Dock was taken care of. His master didn't like the options that Sanson had given him. Now that the last hidden danger of Peach Blossom Dock was eliminated, his master would take over directly. There was no better result than this. The Nan family. In the study, Nan Yifan stood silently. It was already night time. The bright moon hung high in the sky. The cool moonlight flowed in through the window, elongating his shadow. He had been standing in this position from day to night for an entire day. The night wind was cold and his whole body was icy cold. But Nan Yifan didn't feel it at all. He lowered his head slightly. His face was hidden in the darkness and couldn't be seen clearly. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. Patriarch, you haven't eaten for a day. Why don't you have some food? The one who spoke was his confidant, an elder of the Nan family. It was difficult to conceal the worry in his voice. In fact, to powerhouses at their level, not eating for a day was nothing. The reason why this elder was so worried was because he sensed that something was wrong with Nan Yifan's condition. The last time he was like this was on the day of Nan Yi's funeral. But at that time he had only stood for half a day. But this time, something had clearly happened, and it was even more terrifying than Nan Yi's death. The elder standing outside the door was burning with anxiety. Nan Yi was the apple of Nan Yifan's eyes. What could hurt him more than her death? This elder knew that Luo Yannan and Yu Xing had gone to the Peach Blossom Cove. Therefore he was particularly frightened at this moment. He wanted to ask for an explanation, but he didn't dare. You can leave first. After a while, Nan Yifan finally spoke. His voice was low and hoarse. The elder outside the door moved his lips and the uneasiness in his heart grew stronger, but he didn't dare to say anything. Yes. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, he heard Nan Yifan say, "Wait." Then he heard the door open. The elder hurriedly turned around and saw Nan Yifan open the door and walk out. Stay here. I'll go to the family. Digression. 6 o'clock mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1916. The elder was shocked when he heard this. Patriarch means? No. Nan Yifan nodded. But it was already late at night. The elder didn't finish his sentence. Because Nan Yifan raised his head and glanced at him. It was only a day, but Nan Yifan looked like he had aged more than 10 years. Under the faint moonlight, the elder even saw that his hair had turned white. His face, which was always high-spirited, was now haggard. Although the light was dim, the elder still saw Nan Yifan's bloodshot eyes. The moment he met Nan Yifan's gaze, he was instantly speechless. He couldn't say the rest of the words. He didn't know how to describe this feeling. Desolation, fragility, regret, resentment. It was as if all the negative emotions had gathered together. A heavy and oppressive aura spread from Nan Yifan's body. It was so oppressive that she couldn't breathe. Immediately, Nan Yifan said. The elder's heart skipped a beat, and he instinctively felt that something had happened. He had never seen the patriarch like this. Could it be that the eldest young master and the others? He quickly lowered his head and replied in a low voice. Yes. With me here, please rest assured, patriarch. Nan Yifan nodded and then walked past him. A biting cold killing intent was faintly discernible. The elder's heart skipped a beat. When he came back to his senses and wanted to turn around and say a few more words, he found that Nan Yifan's figure had already disappeared. The elder, who was left in place, frowned. His heart was beating fast as if it was being gripped tightly by something. A strong sense of uneasiness welled up in his heart. When Nan Yi died, although the patriarch was very sad, it wasn't to this extent. It went without saying what had happened. After a long time he finally sighed. I'm afraid the world of divine ruins will be in chaos again. Nan Yifan was very fast. It took him a night to come to Meha County. This was the family Yi's territory. Unlike the mountainous terrain of the Nan family, Meha County was a vast and boundless plain. On the green land, a wide and clear river meandered through. Plum blossoms meandered along the riverside. Behind the plum forest stood a grand and luxurious city. Above the city gate, there was a golden plaque with the words Meha County. There were guards in martial attire standing guard at the city gate. When Nan Yifan arrived, the sky was just beginning to brighten. There was almost no one coming in and out of the city gate. Therefore, when he appeared, he immediately attracted the attention of the guards. Who are you? The guards immediately became alert and held their swords in front of them. Meha County was family Yi's territory. Normally, only family Yi's people would enter and leave. It was indeed suspicious that someone would come over so early in the morning. Nan Yifan directly revealed his identity. Go inform your patriarch that Nan Yifan of the Nan clan has come to visit. Nan Yifan? Why was he here all of a sudden? At the Yi residence, the head of family Yi Wentao looked up from his book in surprise when he heard this. How many people did he bring? Patriarch Nan didn't bring anyone with him. He came alone. Moreover, he seemed to be in a hurry as if he had something important to do. The guard who came to report asked respectfully. Then, Patriarch, do you want to see him or not? Of course. Yi Wentao stood up, closed the book and put it aside. He was very tall and looked to be no more than 36 or 37 years old. His facial features were handsome and elegant. He was dressed in a stone-green robe, which made him look like a refined scholar. Anyone who saw him would find it hard to imagine that he was the current head of family Yi. In the world of divine ruins, there were very few rumors about Yi Wentao. In everyone's imagination, Yi Wentao should be fierce and ruthless. It seemed that only in that way could he control the entire family Yi. But in reality he was very different from what most people imagined him to be. Patriarch Nan, please come to the living room. I'll come later. Yes. The guard received the order and quickly left. Yi Wentao looked at his back as he left in a hurry, and his eyebrows moved slightly. The Nan clan and family Yi didn't have much contact with each other. And he knew a little about Nan Yifan. This person was proud by nature. Now that he suddenly came in person, something must have happened. Yi Wentao's heart was pounding. He didn't know what had happened that could make Nan Yifan put aside his pride and come in person. He thought for a while and didn't have an answer. Finally, he decided to meet Nan Yifan first. You can cultivate here in peace. No one will disturb you. He suddenly turned around and said. Behind the 8 screens on the rosewood base, a figure was vaguely reflected. Yes. His voice was low and slightly hoarse, but it also contained a bit of laziness and laziness. Yi Wentao nodded. Only then did he walk out and personally lock the door. After telling the servants to guard the place well, he turned around and left. Not long after Nan Yifan was led into the living room, Yi Wentao came. Haha, brother Nan, what wind blew you here today? Yi Wentao walked in with an eager smile. Nan Yifan looked up. The two looked at each other for a moment, a silent confrontation. A trace of surprise flashed across Yi Wentao's eyes. In his impression, Nan Yifan was always high-spirited and proud. But this time he was visibly haggard, and his hair was stained with white frost. What did he go through? Just as Yi Wentao was guessing in his heart, Nan Yifan had already spoken. I'm here because I have something important to discuss with Brother Yi. After that, he paused for a moment. Yi Wentao quickly reacted, waved his hand and dismissed the servants. All of you leave first. Family head, the confidant accompanying him, was a little hesitant. Nan Yifan didn't look too good like this. If he went crazy and did something, leave? Yi Wentao's voice turned cold. This was family. Nan Yifan dared to come alone. Did he not even have the guts to talk to him alone? Wouldn't that be a joke? The people below all knew his temper, so they didn't dare to say more and hurriedly left. Before he left, he even closed the door carefully. No one dared to eavesdrop here. He walked over and sat opposite Nan Yifan. His expression had returned to its usual gentle and calm. "Brother Nan, if you have something to say, just say it." Nan Yifan stared at him. "I'm here this time to form an alliance with you." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1917. Nan Yifan said word by word. Every word seemed to carry an indescribable heavy stench and resentment. Yuantao was slightly stunned, then smiled. "Brother Nan, are you joking?" After all, the relationship between family Yi and the Nan family had never been close. At this time, Nan Yifan suddenly came alone and asked for an alliance. How could Yi Wentao not be surprised? But Nan Yifan's expression didn't change. "As long as Brother Yi is willing to agree, you can name any conditions." Yi Wentao's smile gradually disappeared. He looked at Nan Yifan and carefully observed his expression, pondering inwardly. This sentence from Nan Yifan's mouth was extremely rare. At the same time, it also showed Nan Yifan's determination this time. Did he really come to win over family Yi? But the Nan family and family Yi's status were equal. Why would he do this? After thinking about it, Yi Wentao decided to ask first. "Brother Nan, don't worry. If you really encounter difficulties, family Yi will not stand by and do nothing. I just don't know, what is it that needs to make Brother Nan so worried?" Nan Yifan paused. "The Nan family wants to fight with Yuntian Tower." Yi Wentao's expression finally changed. "Yuntian Tower? You want to go against the Holy Sun?" Nan Yifan nodded. "Yes." Yi Wentao frowned. "Brother Nan, I'm afraid I can't agree to this." Was this Nan Yifan crazy? Why would he want to fight with Rongxiu? Nan Yifan wasn't surprised by Yi Wentao's answer. In fact, a day ago he wouldn't have thought that he would make such a decision. But things were unpredictable. At this point he had no way out. The moment Yu Xing's jade broke, he knew that he couldn't endure it anymore. He could not completely blame Yi's death on them, but Yu Xing, his years of hard work had all gone to waste. "As I said, I will agree to any condition of Brother Yi." Nan Yi's tone was much heavier than before. Yi Wentao's frown deepened. Nan Yifan knew how dangerous it was to go against Rongxiu. Why did he have to do this? He was even willing to pay a huge price for it. Yi Wentao shook his head. "Brother Nan, you know very well that this matter is not that simple." In the end, he didn't want to offend Rongxiu for the sake of the Nan family. "Brother Nan, you should know how difficult it is to deal with that person. If he chose to go against Yuntian Tower, it would not end well for him. Why must Brother Nan do this? If there's a misunderstanding between you and Yuntian Tower, I can step forward and mediate. Perhaps." Since Nan Yifan had personally come looking for him, Rongxiu would definitely know about this matter. Then, no matter what he said, it was impossible for him to walk out of this quagmire clean. Instead of being secretive and arousing suspicion for no reason, it was better to be honest with him. In this way he could also do the Nan family a favor. In Yi Wentao's opinion, this was the best choice. However, Nan Yifan interrupted him. "There's no possibility of reconciliation between Yuntian Tower and me." Yi Wentao looked at him suspiciously. "Brother Nan, you mean?" Nan Yifan took a deep breath and looked straight at Yi Wentao. Yi and Yuxing were both killed by them. Yi Wentao was shocked at first, but then he immediately understood. No wonder. Those two children were Nan Yifan's lifeblood. Especially Nan Yuxing, who was basically confirmed to be the next patriarch of the Nan family. Because both of them were very outstanding, Nan Yifan had always been proud of himself as the patriarch. Now that both of them were dead, not only did Nan Yifan have no descendants, but his position as the patriarch would also be unstable in the future. Even Yi Wentao knew that there were many people in the Nan family who secretly coveted the position of the patriarch. Nan Yifan did this to avenge his children and to protect his position as the patriarch. These two things were the most important to him. No wonder he came today. In fact, what Yi Wentao didn't know was that there was a very important reason why Nan Yifan chose to do this. Even if he didn't do this, Rongxiu wouldn't let him go. With Rongxiu's intelligence, since he had already killed Nan Yuxing, he would definitely find out that Nan Yifan was behind this. How could he just let it go? After the matter at Peach Blossom Dock was over, he would definitely make a move. At that time, Nan Yifan and the others would be in a passive position. Instead of sitting and waiting for death, it was better to make a move first. There might even be a chance of survival. Nan Yifan really had no other choice. How could he not be in awe of Rong Xiu? If it wasn't for the fact that he really had no other way out, he wouldn't have done this. After knowing that Nan Yuxing had died, he stood in the study for an entire day. He seemed to have done nothing, but in fact he had thought a lot. He regretted it. Even he didn't know why he tacitly allowed Nan Yuxing and the others to go to Peach Blossom Dock quietly at that time. It was as if he had made that decision by accident. Perhaps it was because he felt guilty towards Nan Yi and also resentful towards Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue. He thought that they didn't bring many people with them and it was really the best time to make a move in a place like Peach Blossom Dock. What if he succeeded? It was this what if, and all those thoughts that made Nan Yifan make this decision that he would regret for the rest of his life. At this point there was no use in regretting it. He could only fight back. Yi Wentao didn't know this. But in his opinion, the reasons that Nan Yifan said were enough to support him to make such a choice. He was silent for a long time, but he was still unwilling to agree. Brother Nan, others may not know, but you know. That person is really not easy to deal with. Perhaps this was Nan Yifan's only choice. But what did this have to do with his family Yi? If he got involved in this matter for no reason, not only would he not get any benefits, but he would also get himself into trouble. Yi Wentao never made a losing deal. Seeing that he was in such a difficult position, Nan Yifan sneered in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. He suddenly said, Brother Yi, do you know that Rong Xiu and Shangguan Yu went to the god-slaying tomb and took something from the Black Wall? Yi Wentao suddenly looked up. He restrained his expression, but Nan Yifan was also sharp-eyed. How could he not see the surging waves in his eyes? As for what it is, I think Brother Yi should know without me saying it, right? Nan Yifan suddenly laughed. The Holy Sun's princess is not a simple person. The heavenly square cauldron and the Tutian baby are both in her hands. In addition, she has an unknown black shield in her hand. Although it looks ordinary, it is not inferior to any venerable artifact. When Nan Yifan said this, he didn't notice that Yi Wentao quickly frowned when he heard about the black shield. It's strange. I heard that Shangguan Yu is a person outside the Divine Ruins world, but she seems to have a strong bloodline power. Brother Nan, have you seen her totem? Digression, 7:00 p.m. 5th update. Wow, mobile phone users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1918. Nan Yifan shook his head. No. There were a lot of rumors about Chu Luiyue in the Divine Ruins world. Especially after her wedding with Rong Xiu, the rumors became even more heated. At first, everyone only thought that she came from a humble background, but a series of things that happened later made everyone know that she actually had several backers behind her. Although Nan Yifan had seen Chu Luiyue before, he had never seen her totem. Brother Yi, why are you suddenly asking about this? Nan Yifan was a little puzzled. Yi Wentao smiled and lowered his eyes. Nothing, I just suddenly thought of this and felt a little curious. I heard that when she tested her bloodline at the Yuntian Tower, the result was the same as the Chosen. If she was really born outside the Divine Ruins world, how could she have the bloodline power? One had to know that only the ancestors who had broken through the shackles and reached the peak strength would have the bloodline power later on. It was impossible for someone outside the Divine Ruins world to do so. Isn't Shangguan Jing her ancestor? As Nan Yifan spoke, he suddenly stopped. It was indeed not right. Although Shangguan Jing was a supreme god expert and used to be in the limelight, when he came to the Divine Ruins world, he seemed to have already established the Tianling dynasty. Later on, he encountered trouble in the Divine Ruins world, his soul scattered and he fell into a deep sleep for 1,000 years. It was not until Chu Luiyue came here that he came back to life. No matter how he thought about it, the bloodline power in Chu Luiyue's body did not seem to be inherited from him. Nan Yifan frowned and glanced at Yi Wentao. Why, Brother Yi seems to be interested in this Shangguan Yu? Yi Wentao smiled. I'm just a little curious. Since Brother Nan doesn't know, then there's nothing to ask. He was always so stubborn that Nan Yifan gradually lost his patience. Brother Yi, let's put these things aside for now. I will only ask you one last time. Do you agree to my previous proposal? Yi Wentao fell into deep thought. The room was silent. Time slowly passed. Every minute and every second was torture for Nan Yifan. But he could only wait. After a while, Yi Wentao finally nodded. I promise you. However, I have a condition. Nan Yifan and Yi Wentao talked for a long time in the room. About an hour later, the door was opened again. Nan Yifan cupped his hands and took his leave. Brother Yi, please wait, I'll be going back now. Iwentao knew that it would be hard for him to stay here, so he didn't ask him to stay and just nodded. "Brother Nan, be careful." Nan Yifan responded and turned to leave. His figure quickly disappeared into the distance. Iwentao didn't look away until his figure disappeared. The sound of footsteps could be heard. Iwentao's expression returned to normal as he calmly looked up. The person who came was his second brother Iwenzhua. "Big brother, that person just now was Nan Yifan?" In front of Iwentao, Iwenzhua's attitude was much more restrained. On the surface, Iwenzhua looked older than Iwentao, but in fact Iwentao was 10 years older than him. It was just that Iwentao was extremely talented and his cultivation was very smooth, so he looked younger. He nodded. "What is he doing here?" Iwentao frowned. The Nan family had little contact with them. As the family head, Nan Yifan suddenly came in person. It was hard not to think too much. Iwentao smiled faintly. He has his reasons for coming. Iwentao felt a little uncomfortable. Big brother clearly didn't want to talk about it. This was nothing. After all, the two of them were not ordinary people. What they discussed together must be important, which couldn't be easily revealed. But he was Big brother's younger brother. Was he not qualified to know? The reason why Iwentao was so concerned about this matter was that this was not the first time such a situation had happened. The head of the family was Iwentao. Almost all the important matters were decided by him. Here he had absolute power. Iwentao had never coveted the position of the head of the family, but over the years, Big brother often didn't tell him anything. In fact, there were many times when many elders knew about it, but he knew nothing about it. Iwentao always felt that he was marginalized in the family. After a long time, how could there be no resentment and dissatisfaction? But other than that, Big brother treated him well in other aspects. This made Iwentao feel very conflicted. And this time it was still the same. He endured it for a while and finally swallowed his anger and changed the topic. "I'm here because I have good news to tell Big brother. Jiuqing has broken through." Iwentao raised his eyebrows, seeming a little surprised. So fast? Just now he had told him to cultivate well. In just a few hours he had broken through, as expected of you personally taught him. Iwentao praised with satisfaction. These words finally improved Iwentao's mood. Not at all. After he came back, he has been cultivating with Big brother. With Big brother's guidance, this child naturally broke through quickly. As he spoke, he paused for a moment. "Big brother, no matter what, half of family Yi's blood flows in Jiuqing's body. You see, the position of the young master. From the beginning, this was what he had been thinking. Iwentao had no children. In the future, he would definitely choose a successor from the younger generation. And Jun Jiuqing was the most suitable one." Iwentao put one hand behind his back. He didn't beat around the bush like before. Instead, he seriously thought for a long time. "You are right. It is indeed time to choose a young master. Inform everyone that the family meeting will be held tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Iwentao was a little surprised, but the joy in his heart washed away these emotions. He immediately nodded, unable to hide the excitement in his eyes. "Okay, I'll go now." Peach Blossom Dock-U Mansion. Chu Liwei put down the teacup in his hand and looked at Rong Xiu in surprise. Two big families? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience came from Love Network. Chapter 1919. Rong Xiu nodded and said slowly. "That's right. Most of the families in the world of divine ruins are divided into first, second, and third-class families, but there are two families that are not included in this. One is the Nan family, and the other is Family Yi." Chu Liwei was a little puzzled. Why are these two families so unique? Rong Xiu laughed. "It's a long time ago. Do you remember that I mentioned to you that 10,000 years ago, there was an earth-shattering battle in the god-slaying mound, and countless experts died?" Chu Liwei nodded. Of course she remembered. At that time the battle was fierce. I heard that many people almost fought their way out of the god-slaying mound, and there were countless casualties. Such a fierce battle caused the energy of heaven and earth to riot, and it was almost dark. It gradually threatened many ordinary cultivators outside the god-slaying mound. Chu Liwei pondered for a moment. Judging from the tombstones they had seen in the god-slaying mound, the battle at that time could have caused such a result. With so many experts gathered and fought, it was easy to imagine what a terrifying scene it would have been. Fortunately, someone came to stop them and set up a boundary outside the god-slaying mound. It was not until the battle ended that the boundary finally broke. But it also protected the people outside the god-slaying mound. Chu Liwei widened her eyes in surprise. What kind of person could do that? This not only required benevolence and righteousness, but also extraordinary strength. Rong Xiu paused for a moment and smiled. That person's identity is very mysterious and no one knows. Later, when the battle ended, that person disappeared. It is said that the ancestors of the Nan family and family E were followers of that person. Chu Liwei suddenly understood. Later, the two of them did not pursue that person. Instead, they each found a place in the world of divine ruins and established their own families and clans. Today, the Nan family and family E. Rong Xiu poured a cup of tea. His slender fingers gently stroked the porcelain teacup. His voice was light and ethereal. 10,000 years have passed, and these things have long been buried in the long passage of time. There are very few people who know about it. The Nan family and family E had always thought highly of themselves and rarely got involved in outside affairs. The only ones who know about them are those first-rate aristocratic families with quite a bit of inheritance. No wonder. After listening to Rong Xiu's explanation, Chu Liwei finally understood why she had never heard of the Nan family before. It wasn't hard to understand why Nan Yi and the others were so arrogant when they met them outside the god-slaying tomb. The Nan family and family E, it was an existence that transcended these aristocratic families. So, the Nan family and family E are the two most powerful families in the god-slaying mound? Why was Nan Yifan so afraid of you before? Chu Liwei asked tentatively. It wasn't the first time she had asked this question. Rong Xiu's answer was always very brief. He only said that he had something on Nan Yifan, which made the other party quite afraid. But Chu Liwei felt that something was wrong. Nan Yifan's attitude didn't seem to be purely because he was threatened. Faintly, there seemed to be some respect and fear in their eyes. Rong Xiu glanced at her with a half-smile. Fear? He has already sent people here. What's there to fear? Chu Liwei was speechless for a moment. It was really, although Nan Yuxing had always said that he was here to avenge Nan Yi, how could he have mobilized so many elders without Nan Yifan's tacit consent? Thinking of this, Chu Liwei changed the topic. By the way, I wonder how Luo Yan and the others are doing now? It had been 3 days since the day of the chaos in Peach Blossom Dock. In these 3 days, Chu Liwei and Rong Xiu had been staying at the Yu residence to deal with the aftermath. The terrain of the mountain range outside Peach Blossom Dock had almost completely changed, but fortunately, there was abundant energy here. With the help of Sanson's small space, everything was quickly recovering. Although Peach Blossom Dock had also suffered a lot of damage, fortunately most of them had survived. As for Majin sect, they had been completely annihilated in this chaotic battle. Even their previous residence had been razed to the ground by the angry crowd. On the other hand, the Yu residence had been very lively recently. Every day many people came to the gate. Some expressed their gratitude and some wanted to enter the Yu residence. In short, they all wanted to follow Chu Liwei. After this incident, the survivors of Peach Blossom Dock were unprecedentedly united. They admired and respected Chu Liwei very much and were willing to follow by her side. The reason why they were like this, other than owing Chu Liwei their lives and admiring her talent and strength, there was another important reason. The enchantment of Peach Blossom Dock was covered with a layer of God-destroying tribulation energy. Now, it was completely under the control of Chu Liwei. Chu Liwei had become the owner of Peach Blossom Dock. The enchantment of Peach Blossom Dock was stable now, and the energy of heaven and earth was abundant. It was the best place to cultivate. Who would not want to stay here? Before Chu Liwei came, she had been thinking of finding a place to build her own power. Was there any place more suitable than Peach Blossom Dock? Therefore she went with the flow and took over the entire Peach Blossom Dock. With the enchantment under her control, she naturally had the right to speak in Peach Blossom Dock. These few days she had already sent Sanson and a few others to deal with these matters. They screened the candidates and formed a team of guards. Those with suspicious identities would be locked up and dealt with. At this time, most of the people were loyal to the Yu residents. Even if there were a few suspicious people, they did not dare to act rashly. Sanson had stayed here for a long time and understood the situation in the city well. Therefore these matters were progressing very smoothly. With the help of Tsin Yi and the others, they were even more efficient. This was why Chu Liwei had the time to sit here and drink tea with Rong Xiu. She had asked this question because Luo Yan and the other 3 elders of the Nan family had also been locked up alone after that day. Yes, even with the drifting cloud diagram, they had not been able to escape in the end. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Yan Qing has already been interrogated for 3 days. We should have news soon. Chu Liyue's brows twitched slightly. She was a little hesitant. But those 4 people are all gods after all. It won't be easy to get anything out of them. As soon as she finished speaking, familiar footsteps came from outside. Your Highness, Princess Consort. The person who came in was none other than Yan Qing. Chu Luiyue noticed that he had changed his clothes and had the unique refreshing scent of someone who had just taken a bath. He had specially tidied himself up before coming here. Even so, there was still a faint smell of blood on his body. It could be seen that the process of these 3 days of interrogation. Yan Qing bowed respectfully and said bluntly. One of them confessed. These words immediately interrupted Chu Luiyue's thoughts. She asked in surprise. Confessed? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1920. Yes. Yan Qing bowed her head slightly. Nan Hongyang admitted that they came here with the permission of the head of the Nan family, Nan Yifan. Chu Luiyue was in disbelief. This testimony was fatal for the Nan family. Did Yan Qing really pry open the mouth of the Nan family? She couldn't help but look Yan Qing up and down carefully again. His face was still as cold as ice and he was still as calm as ever. It was as if this matter was nothing to him, but that was Her Eminence. Chu Luiyue didn't think that Nan Hongyang would choose to betray the Nan family. Since Nan Yifan was behind this matter, the people he chose must be people he trusted. Then, since Nan Hongyang had spoken, he must have been forced into a corner. No matter what, that was Her Eminence. What method did Yan Qing use to actually be able to find out all these things? Besides this, did he say anything else? Rong Xiu didn't seem to be surprised and asked lightly. Yan Qing shook her head. No. He said that the main planners of this matter were Nan Yuxing and Luo Yan, and the rest of them just followed the order and came together. He didn't know the details. This was not impossible. It was a matter of great importance. The fewer people who knew, the better. Nan Yifan probably didn't expect that they would fail even after sending such a powerful force. More importantly, he didn't even have the time to escape. In the end, he was captured and interrogated under torture. Chu Luiyue touched her chin. If Nan Yifan had known that things would develop to this point, he probably wouldn't have made this decision. But there was no medicine for regret in the world. What about Luo Yan? Yan Qing paused. He refused to talk. He was a tough nut to crack. There was still some difference between him and Nan Hongyang, otherwise he wouldn't have such a high status in the Nan family. Chu Luiyue had expected that he wouldn't talk. Instead, she was quite surprised when Yan Qing asked Nan Hongyang to admit it. She smiled and said, "It's fine. Since Nan Hongyang has admitted it, it doesn't matter whether he tells us or not." Rong Xiu knocked on the table. That may be the case, but his biological mother is more convincing. Chu Luiyue nodded in agreement. She pondered for a moment. I'll ask him myself later. A trace of hesitation flashed across Yan Qing's face. She subconsciously looked at Rong Xiu. Your Highness, that place is very dirty. No matter, I will accompany you. Rong Xiu didn't seem to care. Since she wanted to go, she must have her reasons. Chu Luiyue winked at Rong Xiu. Her man was indeed reliable. Rong Xiu suddenly asked, "Is there any movement from the Nan family?" Yan Qing immediately said, "Not yet." Their men had been on high alert, but until now the Nan family hadn't sent anyone over. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes. Nan Yifan should have known the moment Nan Yuxing died. Now several days had passed, but he still hadn't made any move. This wasn't normal. Chu Luiyue stood up. In that case, why don't we ask Luo Yan directly now? Yan Qing didn't stop her anymore. She took a step back. Rong Xiu suddenly sighed. Chu Luiyue looked at him in confusion. What's wrong? Didn't he say that he would go with her? Rong Xiu leaned back in the chair, holding his forehead with one hand and gently rubbing between his eyebrows with his slender fingers. His movements were lazy, but there was an indescribable nobility in his bones. The sunlight shone on him, making his white clothes look even whiter than snow. He looked at Chu Luiyue, and there seemed to be a warm color at the corners of his eyes and eyebrows. As newlyweds, Yuer's eyes are full of others, but there is no place for her husband. Digression, the holy sun felt bitter in his heart. Continue at 6 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 1921. Chu Luiyue's ears flushed red. Even at this time he still had the leisure to do this. She subconsciously glanced at Yan Qing. Yan Qing looked down and pretended to be invisible. His Highness and the Princess Consort were newlyweds. The two of them hadn't been able to be alone for long before rushing here. And during this period of time, the two of them had been busy with many things. Perhaps they didn't even have a chance to talk properly together. It was normal for His Highness to be like this. Although he didn't understand love, he understood His Highness. Chu Luiyue also understood her man very well. So she could only sigh helplessly, walk over and take Rong Xiu's hand. "Husband, what are you talking about? Haven't I been accompanying you these past few days? This time it's your turn to go with me, okay?" She was deliberately teasing him, so she deliberately softened her voice. Her tone was rarely soft and coquettish. Every syllable lingered in his ears, like a feather gently sweeping across his heart. Rong Xiu's lips curled into a smile as he held her hand. Her hand was slender and soft. When she approached, the unique faint fragrance of her body drifted over, refreshing the heart. Rong Xiu looked at her bright and resplendent eyes with a smile. His heart moved. "Okay. Wherever Madam wants to go, husband will naturally follow." As he spoke, he stood up and held her hand tightly. His fingertips gently rubbed against the back of her hand. His generous response made Chu Luiyue feel embarrassed. She coughed and gathered her thoughts. "Then let's go over now." Luo Yin and the others were locked up in the Yu Estate's dungeon. They all knew the place. The two of them walked out hand in hand. Yan Qing followed behind. The three of them walked in the direction of the dungeon in the backyard. As soon as they walked out of the courtyard, they bumped into little Hachi and Shifang, who had just returned. Yan Qing raised his eyes and looked over. He was instantly taken aback. The two of them looked as if they had just experienced a catastrophe. Their bodies were covered in dirt, and little Hachi's exquisite and gorgeous dress was stained with mud. He looked like he had just come out of a quagmire. Shifang always liked to torment the vegetable garden, so it was often like this. However, little Hachi was famous for being clean and beautiful. Usually, if there were a few wrinkles in her skirt, she would feel uncomfortable for half a day. Now that she suddenly appeared in such an image, it was no wonder that even an iceberg like Yan Qing was surprised. However, because Rong Xiu and Chu Luiyue were in front of him, little Hachi and Shifang didn't notice him at first. Seeing the two of them like this, Chu Luiyue was both surprised and distressed. "Little Hachi, Shifang, what are you?" She knew that the two of them had gone out 2 days ago, but she didn't expect them to come back in such a sorry state. "Master." When little Hachi saw Chu Luiyue, she immediately wanted to pounce on him, but before she moved, she remembered her appearance at this time. She sighed dejectedly, spread out her hands and acted coquettishly. "Master, look, little Hachi is so pitiful." Although she said that she was pitiful, her beautiful eyes were still bright and sparkling. Even with such a dirty appearance, it couldn't hide her enchanting beauty. Chu Luiyue stepped forward and gently pinched her face. "Little Hachi is the best." Little Hachi immediately narrowed her eyes in satisfaction. Although the dirt on her body was really driving her crazy. But to be able to hear this sentence, it was worth it. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Shifang moved forward, also waiting for his master's praise with a look of expectation. Then he heard Chu Luiyue ask, "Shifang, how do you take care of your sister 8? Shifang? Everyone clearly did the same thing, and he even did more than sister 8. Why was the treatment completely different? Little Hachi glanced at him proudly. Shifang was still too immature. It had been so many years, but he still didn't recognize his position? I was wrong. Shifang also felt wronged. Chu Luiyue nodded in satisfaction. Your sister 8 usually can't stand these things. Look at how much she's been tormented. In the future, let her do less of those dirty and tiring jobs. Shifang tried to restrain himself, but he couldn't help muttering in a low voice, but Sister 8 is the only one who knows how to take care of those medicinal herbs. How could he not do this kind of thing himself? Although he knew a lot of things, most of the time Sister 8 was more suitable. Little Hachi pursed her lips, and her eyes sparkled as if they could drip water. Just as she was hesitating whether to continue moving closer to her master, she suddenly heard Rong Xiu say, "Yan Qing, go over first and clean up over there." Upon hearing this name, little Hachi suddenly froze. She stiffly turned her neck and saw in despair that there was an ice cube standing behind Rong Xiu and Shifang. The ice cube said, "Yes." After saying that, the ice cube seemed to sense little Hachi's gaze and looked over. The two of them looked at each other for a moment. Little Hachi almost fainted. She was now. What was she like now? Ever since the two of them quarreled last time, they hadn't been in contact for a while. Little Hachi originally wanted to find an opportunity to get back at him. Who knew that the opportunity to embarrass herself would not come? Thinking of her disheveled appearance and messy appearance, and then look at him. Little Hachi was about to break down. She had never felt as embarrassed as she did at this moment. Master, I suddenly remembered that I still have something to do. I'll take my leave first. Little Hachi quickly said this and turned to leave. Her footsteps were hurried, and in the blink of an eye, she was gone. Hey. Little Hachi, Chu Liwei originally wanted to say a few more words, but who knew that she would leave just like that? She made a grabbing motion in the air before withdrawing her hand. Why are you in such a hurry? Chu Liwei muttered strangely. Wasn't she fine just now? Shifang, has little Hachi been acting strangely in the past 2 days? Shifang swore to the heavens, no, there really isn't. You also know that we are most concerned about Sister 8. If there's anything, how can we not know? After experiencing the beating in reality, Shifang had already recognized everything. Chu Liwei nodded. Little Hachi did not look like anything had happened. Then let her be for now. You've been tired for a long time. Go back and have a good rest. Chu Liu's comforting words immediately made Shifang's eyes brim with tears of joy. Master still cares about me? He nodded vigorously. Don't worry, Master. Most of the people outside have been dealt with, and third brother has sent people to take over the rest. I believe that they will recover soon. Chu Liwei laughed. Okay, thank you for your hard work. I'll leave a mountain for you to use as a vegetable garden later. Shifang was overjoyed. Thank you, Master. With that said, Shifang did not linger and soon left happily. Chu Liwei exhaled softly and looked at Yanqing, who had not left in time. Forget it, let's go over together. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1922. Yanqing responded, but she felt a little strange. In the beginning, His Highness had planned to go with them. He didn't know why, but he suddenly asked him to clean up the place first. If His Highness really had such a plan, he would have said it earlier and would not have suddenly brought it up halfway. Yanqing took a quick glance at His Highness. His Highness was still as handsome as ever. He was calm and collected, and there was even a faint smile on his face. Since you, doesn't mind, then listen to you, Yanqing was speechless. What was His Highness's faint for? However, His Highness's thoughts had always been hard to grasp. Yanqing only thought for a moment, and then quickly withdrew her thoughts. He respectfully followed behind the two of them, but the scene just now suddenly flashed through his mind. He heard that Shifang and little Hachi had gone out of the city to deal with those plants and medicinal herbs these few days. It seemed that it was indeed quite tiring. Previously, he had heard some news about the 13 U guards and knew that each of them specialized in different areas. Shifang usually liked to grow vegetables. In fact, he was very familiar with the geography of the mountains and rivers. He also knew how to plan and deal with the messy mountain forest. Little Hachi, on the other hand, was fond of alchemy. However, she was different from the average celestial physician. She preferred to ponder over strange herbs and prescriptions. If the two of them worked together, they would be able to help Sanson solve a lot of problems. Regarding the rebuilding of the Peach Blossom Dock, His Highness had made it clear from the start that he did not need their help. Yanqing had been a little worried at first. However, after a few days, he was surprised to find that the 13 U guards were indeed able to handle these matters in an orderly manner. Could even be said that he was outstanding. Chu Liu's subordinates seemed ordinary, but they were all very useful when they encountered a real problem. This made Yanqing have a whole new level of respect for Chu Liu and the 13 U sect. At this moment, Chu Liu suddenly turned around and glanced at Yanqing. Yanqing was quick-witted. She immediately noticed and looked up. Your Highness. Chu Liu looked at him suspiciously as if he was thinking about something. Yanqing was confused. Chu Liu knew little Hachi very well. She had always been very concerned about her image, but when it came to serious matters she didn't care about these things. But this time, at first she was very normal. Later it seemed that after she heard Rong Xiu call Yanqing, her attitude suddenly changed. Yanqing, our family's little Hachi has a bad temper, but she is very kind and is a good girl. If she offended you before, I'll apologize to you on her behalf. Chu Liu knew that little Hachi had been looking for trouble with Yanqing some time ago. However, little Hachi always knew her limits, so she didn't bother too much. Moreover, there had been a lot of things going on during this period of time, so she had forgotten about it. Now that he saw their reactions, he suddenly remembered. Maybe they really had a misunderstanding? Yanqing immediately cupped his hands. Princess Consort, you're exaggerating. Miss 8 is very good, it's all my fault. Offended her. Yanqing thought for a moment and swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. It's all my fault for my inappropriate words and offending little Hachi. He still felt that it wasn't very honorable to say that he had misunderstood her. Therefore he only briefly mentioned it. Chu Luiwei immediately felt relieved when she heard him say that. Yan Qing's personality was always to say what he wanted to say. It seemed that it was really not a big deal. But, for some reason she still felt that it was a little strange. It's just ahead. Rong Xiu held her hand and reminded her. Chu Luiwei came back to her senses, put away these messy thoughts and looked ahead. Let's go and take a look. The Yu Residence's dungeon had been there since the beginning. After Sanson bought this place he renovated it including the dungeon. According to him, everything he prepared for his master had to be the best. So, the dungeon's defensive strength was also far beyond ordinary people's imagination. Just the great Mystic King Master level mystic formations alone were set up as many as 6. Chu Luiwei didn't ask Sanson how he did it. Peach Blossom Cove didn't lack all kinds of capable people. Sanson was able to find them and ask them to help. This was his ability. After imprisoning Luo Yan and the others here, Sanson sent more people to guard this place. Of course, the more important reason why Chu Luiwei was so assured was that she had already done something to these people when she locked them up. Although these 4 people were still in the God realm, they couldn't gather the origin power in their bodies. They were basically no different from cripples. The dungeon was very spacious and empty. Chu Luiwei and the others passed through layers of checkpoints and arrived at the deepest part of the dungeon. Along the way, clear footsteps echoed back and forth, making the entire dungeon seem even more empty and eerie. Before seeing anyone, Chu Luiwei could already smell a thick, sweet and fishy smell. After walking for a while, Yan Qing stopped and took charge of guarding. Rong Xiu and Chu Luiwei continued walking inside. The cells here were all made of fine iron, and they were all connected to each other. However, the 4 people of the Nan family were locked in different places. Not only could they not see each other, they couldn't even hear each other's voices. This was to make it easier to break them down one by one. Finally, the 2 came to the door of a cell. Through the bars and barriers they could clearly see the scene inside. He's Nan Hongyang, Rong Xiu said. Chu Luiwei nodded. At this time, Nan Hongyang was curled up on the ground, covered in blood. It was obvious that he had suffered a lot. Anyone who saw him would find it hard to believe that he was a God realm expert. Hearing the sound, Nan Hongyang moved and looked up. Digression, 7 o'clock. What's more embarrassing than seeing the person you like when you're in a mess? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.